Good evening, everyone. Welcome to joining us here for the first night of the House hearing on the local legislation. I'm Delegate Kaiser, Chair of the County Delegation. To my left is Susan Lee, Vice Chair of the Delegation. We expect even more of our House members here tonight. I have a few announcements to make. First, to remind people of the timing. We do have 15 people on one bill and at least 15 others on the other bills, and with the time for questions, that's why we have to keep things moving. 3 minutes for someone representing an organization, 2 minutes for individuals. This upcoming Wednesday night, we have our local hearings on the bi-county legislation regarding park and planning and the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. We do have an announcement to be made from Delegate Resnick to my right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder that next Monday, a week from today, 7 o'clock, same time, upstairs in the 7th floor hearing room, the County Affairs Subcommittee of this delegation will be meeting to review a number of these bills. We made a decision this year to have a work session, a subcommittee work session here in Rockville before session starts, so that people who want to come and participate in the work session don't have to trot out to Annapolis when the session begins in early January. So next Monday, 7 p.m., the bills that will be on the agenda have not yet been determined. A lot of it will depend on how much testimony we have here today on these bills, but in the next day or two, it'll be up on the website at www.montgomerycountydelegation.com. So please check that out for the actual bills themselves, and I look forward to seeing all of you next Monday.
Lastly, announcements for the members themselves. Please get your Sunshine Fund check into Sarah Hartman. Gives you all meeting to contact your spouse to get your checkbook here if you don't have it. And then the last reminder is that we are televised tonight, just to let everyone know. The first bill we have on our agenda tonight is MC 514, Archery Hunting Safety Zone, from Delegate Lutke. If you'd like to go up there and be joined by the first person speaking in support, Councilman George Leventhal.
Good evening to my colleagues from our House delegation. We appreciate your service. I'm speaking on behalf of the Montgomery County Council, which has unanimously supported MC 514, both in the 2013 session and in the upcoming session. On November 5th, 2007, I was returning home from a busy day. I was driving on the Beltway at the 55-mile-an-hour limit, and completely unexpectedly, a deer scampered across the Beltway, smashed through the windshield of my car, and struck me in the face. It was a catastrophic injury. All of the bones on the left side of my face were shattered: my cheek, my nose, and my jaw. I've had 4 facial reconstruction surgeries. People tell me that I was lucky. It's not the kind of luck I would wish on anyone, but I know what they mean. I'm not blind. I did not suffer spinal cord damage or brain damage, and of course I'm alive and able to work. But the experience certainly helped me to understand the randomness and uncertainty of life, as well as to understand the great hazard posed to our motorists from the proliferation of deer. Those who worry about cruelty to deer from hunting, I think, perhaps fail to acknowledge the cruelty to deer posed by accidents on our roadways. Deer overpopulation is a very serious problem in Montgomery County. In 2012, there were more than 2,000 deer vehicle collisions reported to the Montgomery County Police, and many, many more collisions occur that do not result in a police report. There is also substantial damage to agriculture and to homeowners' yards and property. Although deer are not the only animals that carry Lyme disease-bearing ticks, they do contribute significantly to that problem as well. Montgomery County has taken this problem very seriously. We have managed hunts in our larger, more rural parks and some rural county-owned property. Police sharpshooters are used in some of our more urban parks in our more densely populated areas, but these efforts are not doing enough to stem the problem. We need to find safe ways to improve our control of the deer population. I know that some find it unpleasant to consider deer hunting, but in 2012 and 2013 deer hunting season, 5,598 deer were harvested in Montgomery County. Deer hunting is, in fact, a very common practice, and bow hunting as well. Last year and this year, the County Council is supporting the proposed legislation to decrease the safety zone for archery hunting from 150 yards to 50 yards. The 50-yard safety zone is currently in place in Frederick and Carroll counties. A hunter would still have to have the property owner's permission, could not discharge a bow from, onto, or across a public road. Reducing the required safety zone will most likely allow county residents who have larger residential lots to employ hunters. This may be particularly helpful in residential areas near the C&O Canal National Park because the National Park System does not have a deer management plan. The Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife and Heritage Service does not believe that a 50-yard safety zone for bow hunting will affect the safety of people or pets, since most shots are taken from 25 yards or less, and most archers shoot downward from a tree stand. According to Peter Jane, Associate Director for Game Management of the Wildlife and Heritage Service, the state's top game official, there has not been a single injury to a non-hunter during archery season in Maryland in the last 50 years. Again, I know that this is an emotional issue for many of our constituents. I've heard the strong views expressed on both sides, although I will say that the preponderance of opinion has been in favor of controlling deer. I would also say to you that when you hear the impassioned arguments of those who oppose deer hunting, you have to ask yourself, how would that work? I've been in dialogue with constituents who say we should simply get rid of the homes and the shopping centers that have been built in the deer's habitat. While I'm sympathetic to the desire to preserve our environment and reduce our footprint, it simply isn't likely that we will be getting rid of homes or shopping centers. Homo sapiens are also part of the ecosystem, and Homo sapiens are entitled to shelter and sustenance. So we have to be practical about this issue. I appreciate Delegate Ludge for introducing this bill, and again, on behalf of the County Council, we unanimously support it.
Thank you. Delegate Lukey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the delegation. You have my written testimony, and I won't rehash it. I'm glad that Councilman Leventhal was able to come out today to give a very human perspective on the issue. Last year, when we discussed this issue for a long time in Annapolis, we had a lot of what I think are very hypothetical discussions. But the reality is that from a safety perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a disease prevention perspective, we don't have a lot of great solutions to the deer problem. We don't have a lot of options. Contraceptive use has not been tested in a large-scale deer population. It's just not a possibility. We can't reintroduce wolves. We can't, as Councilman Leventhal says, tear down houses to restore deer habitat. So hunting is one of the few options we have. Let me quickly address a couple things. First of all, the previous session we had tried to hammer out a compromise in delegation. The compromise we ended up trying to hammer out would have allowed the County Council to make the decision. That led to the death of the bill because the way it was written would have essentially taken away the authority to monitor hunting in Montgomery County from the DNR police and given it to Montgomery County Police. It makes more sense to do it in the original way the bill was proposed, which is why it's been reintroduced that way this year. And in addition, I had spoken with a number of you towards the end of last session about reaching out to deer managers in the county, looking at other possibilities, and you'll hear from some of the deer managers in the county tonight. Like I said, there aren't a lot of great options, particularly when you're talking about areas of the county that are a little bit denser. And you can see the two maps in front of Councilman Leventhal and I. The one on the left shows I'll hold them up. The one on the left shows the current range of 150 yards. The one on the right shows where hunters would have access under the proposed range of 50 yards. And you can see that in particular in the lower two-thirds of the county, within the denser part of the county, there are very few options for deer management right now, even on public lands, and this would ease that up somewhat. With that, I'm happy to take any questions from the delegation.
Any questions for Delegate Lukey or Councilman Leventhal? Delegate Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any estimates as to how many deer will be culled during the, or with the modifications? In other words, what are the estimates? What?
Sure. We tried to seek that information from Frederick and Carroll counties who've shifted their range over the last few years. They haven't been keeping track. There are no solid numbers on the differential, and it's also hard to estimate the effects given that many of these herds are localized. It's not like a county-wide herd that's migratory. So there's essentially no good science that we can point to on that. But it is clear that in local areas, it will allow better management of the herds.
And it's my understanding, correct me please if I'm wrong, and I've been trying to get as much information as possible on the issue. Currently, under the law as it exists, archery hunters given permission can actually go right up to a private residence. My understanding from Mr. Jane is that changing this law will simply allow anyone who archery hunts to come within 51 yards of a residence, as opposed to where we stand right now, that with permission, any archery hunter can come right up to a private residence to do their hunting. So please, if there's any questions that you have about that, I did ask for clarification from him, and he did respond in that fashion.
Well,
I see
Delegate
Councilmember
Kramer,
Leventhal
yeah.
looks
Delegate
quizzical.
Kramer, when you say that the bill would allow anyone to come within 50 feet of a residence, the
Yards.
bill, 50 yards, thank you. The bill would not enable a hunter to incur on anyone's property who has not given permission, not even to retrieve an animal that's been shot.
My understanding, and I asked this question to Mr. Jane, is that what we would be doing is now, by reducing the safety zone, and that's what it's referred to in the law as the safety zone, that we would be allowing any individual who bow hunts to come within, now it's 150 yards, they would be able to come within 50 yards
With
of
permission.
a residence. Not without 51 yards without permission.
Delegate-
So in other words,
Delegate Kramer, so
Yes.
there's a distinction here between the safety range, which relates to the distance from a dwelling, and your actual property. So first of all, I can't hunt on your property without permission under any circumstances.
Correct.
So right now, if I want to hunt on my own property, then I have to get permission from everybody who owns a dwelling within 150 yards of where I'm hunting. This would allow me to hunt on my own property with permission from anybody within 50 yards where I'm hunting, but only with bows. The 150-yard range was made for firearms hunting, and firearms, obviously, have a significantly longer range than bow hunting. Bow hunting's done from an elevated stand. The shots have to be taken at a very close range. So, usually you're talking about 25, maybe 30 yards max, which is why I believe the differential is warranted.
So once again, though, just so my understanding is correct, and I believe we're on the same page, any bow hunter, and it could be public lands that abut private residence,
Right.
that now would be required to stay 150 yards from that residence, will be able to come up to 50 yards to hunt. And also asking for clarification from Mr. Jane, he indicated that, yes, with archery hunting, it is frequently done from a stand in a tree, but there is nothing that prohibits a hunter from being on the ground and targeting the deer from ground level as opposed to being elevated pointing down. So, do we?
To my knowledge, there's no prohibition of that. The challenge is, you're correct in saying that if I have permission from anybody who owns a dwelling within 150 yards, I can hunt on my own property right now. But that ends up being prohibitive in much of the county because when you're talking about 150 yards, you're talking about a huge radius of land. Many landowners, and you'll see a display a little bit later from a hunter who ran into this situation where, one person who, has maybe concerns about hunting can essentially veto hunting on a huge swath of land on other people's property under the current law.
All right, but I just wanted to clarify that what we could do right now allows, with permission, a hunter to come right up to a residence with permission, and the understanding that any other residence within 150 yards also is required to give permission.
Right.
But that can be done now.
Right, but again, you're approaching this from the hypothetical perspective. I think if you talk to some of the hunters who are going to talk here tonight, essentially the result of that is that virtually no hunting happens anywhere in denser parts of the county because you always have one person in the neighborhood who's opposed. So it's impossible to get that written permission.
And could it be that that concern is a neighbor who is worried about the safety and well-being of, their family, their children, the family pets? That
Again,
may be within 50
50
yards. Do we know exactly how far an arrow will travel? And perhaps someone who's testifying this evening will be able to.
Delegate Kramer, I think
Right,
that question might be better suited for some of the other
Right.
people that are coming up.
Yeah, I agree. That's appropriate.
Yeah, I will. Sorry, I apologize. The first part of your question, can you repeat it for me?
Well, I was just saying that is it possible that when
You
there is
brought up
a
the
neighbor who
safety. Yeah.
objects, they're concerned about the health and well-being of their family?
And I think a lot of this
and
has to
risk.
do with fear and misinformation. And as delegate or as councilman, sorry, gave you a promotion there. Councilman Leventhal pointed out, there aren't accidents involving bow hunters except involving bow hunters for them. I mean, you look through the records of bow hunting in Maryland and their safety records kept by DNR. All of the accidents I've been able to find involved bow hunters themselves falling out of tree stands. So the safety concerns are frankly wildly overblown.
Yeah, just again, I'm going to repeat what I said in my testimony. 0 accidents in Maryland in the last 50 years involving bow hunting other than to the archer. 2,000 deer car collisions just in 2012, just reported to the Montgomery County Police, which significantly understates the number of collisions because not all of them end up in a police report.
And just speaking hypothetically, is it possible that the reason we haven't had those accidents is that we've had a safety zone in a densely populated area like Montgomery County of 150 yards, and maybe that's the reason we haven't had accidents?
I think-
Zero accidents in Carroll Frederick County, which have the
Far
50
more
yard
rural and not
Although
nearly
they
the
do have
population
urban zones,
density.
and Fairfax County has significant hunting going on, and it's approximately as dense as we are. And you'll hear some of the testimony tonight speaking to Fairfax County's situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Leventhal, I'm sorry to hear about the situation and the accident that you were involved in with the deer. Thank you for sharing that. A couple of questions I had for you is when the council was considering possibly to do deer management and solutions, did they consider other things besides reducing the safety zone, such as perhaps lengthening the hunting season? Maryland already has the longest hunting season across the nation from September 7th through January sometime, I understand, for bow hunting. Perhaps allowing more Sundays available for people to be able to hunt on their properties and other, things like this as a consideration before.
DNR determines the hunting seasons. We'd have to pass legislation to expand Sunday hunting.
So, Delegate Miller, we're open to all options. Primarily, our emphasis at the County Council has been working with the Park Department with respect to its managed hunts on its property. I'm certainly happy to interact with State DNR and with all of you to identify all options. The number of complaints I get from my constituents about deer overpopulation is growing. It's always been large, and so I don't think our minds are closed to any options, but I'm here tonight to express the Council's unanimous support for this legislation.
Any additional questions? If not, we'll call up the next group. I'm calling up 4 people. First, Peggy Dennis from the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Dan Wilhelm, Jill Bociccio, sorry if I've mispronounced your name, and Howard Dickler. The 4 of you, the first is representing an organization, the other 3 of you as individuals. They will be doing the timer. When the yellow light goes on, that means you have 30 more seconds. When the red light goes on, that means stop. So the yellow light means please wrap up and summarize. Thank you. And first, Peggy. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. And I know you have, thanks to Sarah, my written testimony, but I'd like to go off score and address several points that have been brought up, specifically by Delegate Kramer. You asked about the number of deer that might expect to be taken by bow hunters on private lands. In Fairfax County, and I have as part of my testimony their information about their regulations on bow and arrow hunting in suburban neighborhoods. In Fairfax County, there is no minimum lot size for bow and arrow hunters. There is no safety perimeter. Any homeowner can give written or verbal permission to a bow and arrow hunter to hunt on their land. It's suggested that they let the surrounding homeowners know that this is going to be happening. In Fairfax County, 75% of the deer that are taken each year are taken by private bow and arrow hunters on private lands. And Virginia, like Maryland, has no record of ever having had a human or pet fatality or injury caused by bow and arrow hunters. I'll also digress because my little cul-de-sac very close to the C&O Canal Park was lucky enough last season to have a experienced, licensed bow and arrow hunter, David Burke. I understand he has written testimony in with you because he couldn't be here tonight. He hunted at the end of our cul-de-sac with the permission of the two homeowners on either side of his area. He had a perfect location, aiming down. He had his corn dispenser programmed to feed the deer at the same time each day. He came early in the morning. In 10 visits, he took out 11 deer. He was silent. He was lethal. He was very effective. No one in the neighborhood even knew he was there. There was no danger to anyone, persons or pets. Bow and arrow hunters are extremely careful and cautious. They're sort of the opposite extreme of the rifle members that go out with their 6-packs of beer and go shooting and sometimes shoot each other. This is nothing like that. I'd like to talk a little bit about people that say that bow and arrow hunting is inhumane. When done right, it's extremely humane because it's fast, lethal, and relatively painful. Deer vehicle collisions, Mr. Leventhal mentioned those. I have had 2 collisions with deer. One was fairly minor. I went back, I couldn't find the deer. The second one took out my front headlights, so I knew it was fairly serious for the deer. I did what 99% of people who have deer vehicle collisions did not do. I went home, got my husband, he brought his coveralls and his knife. We took flashlights. We tracked the deer in the dark into the park, found it in a ditch, writhing in pain, bleeding out of its eyes. We dispatched it. That's far more humane than deer vehicle collisions.
Thank you. Mr. Wilhelm.
Yes, as you noticed from my testimony, Peggy and I didn't coordinate who was speaking for the Civic Fed. I'm speaking for 2 minutes. If you've noticed in the Washington Post Sunday, there's an article about deer, and Time this week, at my house it came today, and the front cover is deer population, national problem. So, it's like bullseye on deer nationally. The deer population has grown so large that many starve and many more are killed every day on our roads. A large number mean that they are also in yards, devouring flowers, shrubs, vegetation, and just about all other plants in our yards. Short of fencing everything in, there is no way to protect our plants. That's what I've had to do with my garden, and I put fences up around my shrubs, hedges, so they don't eat those things and they all die. The best course of action is to reduce the number of deer to a reasonable number. Civic Fed supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bocciccio?
Thank you. My name is Jill Bocciccio, and I live in Old Farm, one of the developments off of Montrose Road. And last night I had 13 deer in my front yard, and that's not an unusual thing. Because of the deer population, I got Lyme's disease, and then also because of that, I got Bell's palsy all down the right side of my face. I've been dealing with the doctors say it'll be gone in 2 weeks to 6 months. It's been 2.5 years. Very expensive going to different doctors. One of them even said, given your age, I wouldn't hold out any hope it's going to get any better. It's difficult to talk. My whole side of my face is frozen. It's difficult at times to see. I am a portrait photographer. Thank God I got another eye because I can use that. I think it's very important to say that deer live and die within 1 mile of where they're born. They don't migrate all over the place. They are right there. And it's also important to talk to you about the deer tick. A full deer tick, one tick will lay 2,000 to 3,000 eggs, and 50% of them carry Lyme's disease. And the thing about Lyme's is that you may go in and go, okay, we just go get some antibiotic and you're good to go. Well, the problem is that many times you cannot detect that you have it. It hides within the muscles. And let's say you go back and they go, okay, you're cured. And then you find out that years later that you're not cured. And I know someone who's had it for 17 years, and I know that some people have lost their jobs because they can no longer do their work. One of my friends is here, and she wasn't able to she was an artist, and she wasn't able to read. I mean, it causes all kinds of debilitating things, including heart attacks, to the point where a 13-year-old girl in North Carolina last month died because of Lyme's disease and the struggle it did on her heart. Thank you.
Are there any questions for any of the three individuals up here? Delegate Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here this evening, and I appreciate the testimony. I don't think there's any disagreement that we have a deer problem. I think everybody's in agreement with that. The question is, how best do we address it? And perhaps I missed my opportunity while the council member was here, because I think there are ways to do it that may in fact cost money that the county would need to put into the budget. And I guess my question is, if there was a more efficient, effective, and way to do this, to thin the herds, would you all object if a little bit of your tax revenue went to culling the deer herds? Would you all be comfortable with that, or do you feel it has to be something that is paid for privately? Just curious.
I'd like to answer that by saying that I have been told, and I'm not 100% sure that it's true, that the taxpayers are already paying considerable amounts of money, first for the managed hunts in the parks, but secondly, to pay the deer processor for all the deer that the private hunters are taking up so that they can be processed and given to the soup kitchens. So we're already paying a fair amount for deer culling the herds.
But I guess we don't know what that is. And Peggy, thank you. I appreciate the email that you sent me on this subject. And I think in the email and in what your discussion this evening reiterates is that your experience was with, and I quote, a licensed and experienced bow hunter who did a very effective job under the law as it exists today in thinning the deer herd in your neighborhood, wherever that was. Under the laws that exist today, an experienced and skilled hunter. What I've looked for in the legislation and have not been able to find is any requisite that the hunting be done by an individual who is skilled and experienced. And quite frankly, would you want Ben Kramer cut loose with a bow within 50 yards of your home? Because under this bill, that's exactly what could happen. And I do appreciate that Delegate Ludke has put in this bill, because we've got the conversation going. It is an issue. It's a problem. The question is, how are we going to go about it the most effective way? And that begged my question, how many additional deer are we going to be culling by virtue of this, which I don't think we have a handle on. If we could reduce the herds by extending Sunday hunting, firearms hunting on Sundays in Montgomery County, would you support that? And my understanding is we could have a far greater impact on reducing the size of the deer populations, the numbers, with Sunday hunting.
I would certainly support Sunday hunting, but for bow and arrow hunters too, in
Right.
neighborhoods.
Okay.
This is Dan Wilhelm. I would like to see what the other options are. I don't want to spend a lot of money, but I want to get rid of the deer. I think the hunting is the most effective way. My wife and I were joking, I guess yesterday the subject came up and somebody was quoting $1,000 to sterilize a female deer. And I said, sure, that's a lot of, the amount of deer in the county, that's millions and millions of dollars to do that, and how real effective that is. So I'm skeptical that we can really find anything that's really safe. So I'm open to it, but I'm skeptical. Also, I'd like to have you come out and hunt in my lawn. Wouldn't have a problem.
Dan, I don't think you'd want that. Trust me.
I was, when I was a little kid, a long time ago, I used to do target practice with a bow, and an arrow doesn't go that far. The experts here can tell you more than I can, but I don't think they go very far.
If I could just add one other thing. My understanding is that this is enabling legislation strictly geared toward the 50-yard safety perimeter. I believe it would be up to the county council to enact further restrictions and perhaps require that any bow and arrow hunters working in neighborhoods be licensed and members of insured bow and arrow clubs and with a good reputation. I believe that would be within the purview of the county council.
Well, that certainly would increase the comfort level, but having said that, my understanding is that this is not enabling legislation. There were some problems with creating enabling legislation that arose last year, so this just simply reduces the safety zone from 150 yards to 50 yards across the board. And am I correct with that, Delegate
We will clarify that, Delegate Kramer, before either the work session or the further work sessions we have on this as a delegation. Are there any other questions for this panel? If not, calling up the next group, I had already called up Howard Dickler, Linda Rieger, Marvin Friedman, and Kevin Commit, I'm sorry. I think the first gentleman might not be here, so Linda, once you sit down, please begin. What says two? Please begin.
Okay, I'm supposed to have 3 minutes though. I'm Linda Rieger, president of the. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm Linda Rieger, president of the Potomac Village Garden Club, and I have signatures from over 75 members of my neighborhood who say, hunt on my property. They are feeling safe with people coming onto their property, and we have 1/4 to 1/3 acre lots. They're done with the deer. Let me tell you why. This is what is happening. This is a fence right here. This is a private property where there are little trees, all kinds of, things growing up that's supposed to grow up inside, your forest. This is a conservation area. Conservation area? I don't think so. It's dying. And that's what's happening to the forests. And the people in the Division of Natural Resources will tell you that. The Sierra Club will tell you that. That's what's happening. The forests are dying. I want everyone in this room to respond by raising your hand in response to several questions as you look at this picture. Raise your hands if you see degradation of our forests. Raise your hands, everybody in this room. Raise your hands if you fear for the future of our forests. Raise your hands. Raise your hands if anyone in your family or you has been hit by a deer in your car. Raise your hands. Raise your hands if anyone in your family or you have had Lyme disease. Keep your hands up. Everybody who had your hands up from the beginning, raise your hands. So this is what is happening to our county. Why can't landowners use bow hunters at a 50-yard safety distance Since the state Division of Natural Resources believes that these landowners can use bow hunters safely, and they actually recommend a list of them to the landowners in Maryland where it's legal. Since last year, the Potomac Village Garden Club has organized using various options around the problem of the deer. We spread the information of options outside of Potomac. There are 41 garden clubs in Montgomery County, and they're beginning to have programs too, identifying that the only way to control the deer is through bow hunting in their communities. So I'm here to tell you today, representing your constituents, vote for the 50-yard safety zone. We are your constituents and environmentalists and people who want a safe and healthy community. We vote, and we will watch for your vote on MC 514.
Thank you. Marvin Friedman?
My name is Marvin Friedman, and I've been a resident of Montgomery County for the past 47 years, and I am a Lyme disease deer automobile survivor. In the mid-1980s, my wife and I purchased a heavily wooded lot in Potomac, opposite a National Capital Area park, whose trees are designed to protect the Kilgore Branch Stream. When we first moved in, there were very few deer. Now, about 17 years ago, in order to pursue our serious interest in gardening, we were forced to erect a deer-proof fence around half of our property. Despite the fact that, like the Stream Conservancy Park, our fenced area is heavily Conservancy Park, which contains the same topography and soil conditions. There are no new trees, zero. The deer eat the shoots as soon as they sprout. The consequence is that the park is going to climax forest, and unless something is done to manage the deer population, that forest will ultimately disappear together with its stream protective ability. A National Park Service representative came by and verified what I'm telling you here. We, as an individual, there are only a few things we can do. We have had bow hunters who have come on our property shooting from platforms. We have no difficulty with them being only 50 yards. I certainly would not welcome, as a homeowner, I would not ask someone like Delegate Kramer to be coming on our property, but the experienced and competent hunters we have used have been very valuable.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Mr. Comet?
The Nature Conservancy now
Make sure that your mic is on, and it's not just for those of us in the room, but that's the only way it gets televised.
How do I make sure it's on? Hello? Check. Oh. How's that? Oh. Oh. Did they reset the timer? The Nature Conservancy now calls the overpopulation of deer the biggest threat to the forest on the East Coast, even more than climate change. The Wildlife Society, the Sierra Club, also speak about pending disaster from inaction. I see this in the woods behind my own home. Almost all agree there is an overpopulation of deer. We have not taken the deer habitat as some have wrongly suggested. We have created the perfect habitat for deer, with abundant food and protection from predators. The deer are thriving and reproducing in record numbers and destroying our remaining forest and wildlife habitat. I don't hunt. I don't possess a license or a bow. If contraceptives and managed hunts in the parks were effective, myself and many others would not be here tonight. Some are concerned about the safety of this bill. There were 34,000 deer auto collisions in Maryland last year. If we include D.C. and Virginia, it brings the number to over 80,000, many of them resulting in serious injury and death. I personally know people injured and killed in deer collisions. Lyme disease can be untreatable and even kill certain dogs in the retriever family. Many of my neighbors and their children are suffering from chronic, life-changing illness from Lyme disease. I'm sure everyone in this room knows someone suffering from Lyme or injured in a deer-related collision. I am an animal lover and a nature lover. I've spent the last 5 years researching alternatives, and I have not found any that would be effective. Frederick and Carroll counties, as well as Fairfax, have also already done this without incident. The overpopulation of deer are the real safety issue. How can you sit and do nothing while our county residents are being injured and killed and suffering from chronic illness? Our remaining wildlife and forests are being decimated. If you're really concerned about the safety of our children, the forest, and endangered wildlife, please pass this bill. I have a map and permission slips for the organized hunts we have been conducting in my neighborhood. The problem is bad enough in my area that almost every single homeowner contacted felt strongly enough they are willing to allow bow hunting on their property. There's an old saying, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Those of you running for re-election should take pause and educate yourselves and listen to the growing calls for action from your constituents. We need you to vote for this to protect our residents, our children, and save our remaining forests. Close to 1 out of 100 drivers in Maryland hit a deer last year. Hopefully no one in this room will have a deer fly through their windshield tonight on the way home, but the odds are it will happen to someone in this room within the next year. I have submitted data and references to support many of my claims by email that should be in packets. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. Are there any questions for this panel? If not, thank you all for coming tonight. The next group coming up, David Burke with the Station 8 Montgomery County Fire and Rescue, David Weitzer, Montgomery County Agricultural Advisory Committee, and Cully Pedinati, private citizen. And since you're the only one coming up, sir, if you could say your name as you begin and make sure you turn on the mic.
Okay, my name is, feel kind of lonely up here. My name is David Weitzer. I am chairman of the Montgomery County Ag Advisory Committee, and I have the following testimony. On behalf of the Montgomery County Ag Advisory Committee, please accept this letter in support for the proposed MC 5-14, which proposes to include Montgomery County with Carroll and Frederick County, where the safety zones for archery hunting is 50 yards. The AAC has been advocating for 10 years that the state of Maryland and the county government needs to be more proactive in controlling the growing deer population that negatively impacts our residents. The AAC is committed to fostering an environment where public health and safety of our residents is most important. The AAC has also believed that the growing deer population negatively impacts the health of residents due to the increasing cases of Lyme disease. The safety of residents is also negatively impacted by the growing number of deer vehicle collisions. All of the deer management programs that are currently in place are not reducing the deer population in the county. Farmers are very frustrated by the lack of deer management on many of the parks located in the Ag Reserve. In 2013, farmers have experienced record crop yields on many of their farms. While 2013 has been one of the best growing seasons on record, some farmers have witnessed a 100% crop loss on their farms adjacent to parks where the deer congregate and then browse on farmers' crops planted on adjacent farmland. Over the years, county residents become more and more frustrated by the negative impacts of deer as they destroy property from deer vehicle collision, as well as deer destroying most plants and flowers that residents purchase for use and enjoyment for their property. Reducing the deer population of the county requires that hunters have all the tools necessary to safely harvest the deer. The county needs to consult with representatives from other jurisdictions, better understand the tools they have in place and how effective they are in reducing deer herds. There is a misconception by the general public that as development takes away the habitat for deer, the outcome is that deer are congregating in down county parks close to where most of the county residents live. According to the Maryland DNR, the birth of wild wildlife management in the early 1900s has expanded the deer population back into all habitats. State wildlife biologists have restocked the white-tailed deer to all available habitats in the state. White-tailed deer thrive in habitats composed of woods and openings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Weitzer? Delegate Lutke.
Mr. Weitzer, thank you for coming out tonight. I have a question in relation to Sunday hunting, which was brought up earlier. I know that there's significant debate about Sunday hunting in the agricultural community, and in particular, equestrian agricultural operations tend to be strongly opposed, like the Maryland Horse Council opposes Sunday hunting. Does the Agricultural Advisory Committee have any position on Sunday hunting?
No, we have not taken a position on that, but I certainly would think it would be supported by the committee.
Okay, thank
Our
you.
position's not official.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Two more supporters of the bill, if they are here, Steve Juranis and Mary Ellen Morris. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, I'm Mary Ellen Morris. I'm here mostly for the health issues. I've had Lyme. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm here mostly for health issues. I personally have had Lyme disease twice, both very, very different symptoms. I would not have known I had it if I hadn't gotten the rash both times. Fortunately, I got the medicine right away and I'm fine. My husband had the similar situation. He did not get the rash, but because I knew the symptoms, he was able to get the antibiotics and he was fine. One of the people in our neighborhood didn't know for 3 years. She now ends up in the hospital at least once a year near coma, so she's never going to be the same from the disease. When our grandchildren were there, they could not go out in the yard because we have our community everybody has between 2 and 3 acres and lots of trees. We live near one of the parks, so the deer seem to like our lawns better than the grass in the forests because they're there all the time munching. In fact, when I registered today, there was a deer in my backyard, which I would have chased if I hadn't been on the phone. So the kids can't go outside because it's too hard trying to find all those tiny ticks. So they lost the fun they could have had. We've also been in a car collision. We were very lucky. The deer jumped off a side of the road from trees on Georgia Avenue, and we killed the deer flat out. Anyway, the point is, if that deer had jumped a fraction of a second later, the deer would have gone through either, because they were coming off of a hill, they would have gone through one of our windows, either hit me or my son. We were very lucky. We didn't get hit, but the car was totaled. The whole front end was pushed in, the doors went open. So they did a lot of damage, 40 miles an hour, which isn't all that fast. So anyway, they need to be taken care of. I'm a strong supporter of taking care of wildlife, but deer are not an endangered species.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Morris? If not, thank you. We have one person here, no position, I think, though, to answer questions from the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Rob Gibbs. Thank you for coming tonight.
I'm actually here representing the county's deer management work group, which is a multi-agency advisory committee that developed and is now implementing the deer management program for the county. We annually collect data and make recommendations for deer management issues. We have not made consensus on this bill, but I do have a short list of expected outcomes and some illustrative maps that should add to the conversation. I'll pull that out when I'm finished. Despite our robust deer management program, deer populations do continue to increase outside of parks, particularly in suburban neighborhood areas where they find excellent habitat, as you've already heard, and where population controls are limited by our weapons ordinance to archery and restricted considerably by the 150-yard zone. We get many calls asking for relief of deer impacts in these types of areas, and really there aren't many options we can offer. The Deer Management Work Group has a couple of expectations that we would expect from this bill. First, on the negative side, and I should say these aren't really negative impacts, but rather cautionary notes. Some feel that introducing the bill could offer an opportunity for those opposed to hunting to actually try to reverse that and increase the safety zones, or to protest against hunting. That's nothing new, something we've been in ongoing discussion. Also, if passed, citizens could see hunting closer to homes, and that could raise safety issues for those who have little or no experience with archery hunting and are not aware of the excellent safety record that you've heard about today. Education could be used to reduce both of these concerns. On the positive side, reducing the safety zone to 50 yards would certainly increase the opportunity for communities and landowners to manage deer on their property. As the map that I'll pull out illustrates clearly, it will create a patchwork of areas across the county that would increase harvest and improve or reduce deer impacts as populations go down, which is what we've seen dramatically in our parks where we're doing management consistently. Also, it would increase the potential for deer management opportunities on public lands down the road if and when archery was used in those areas. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the county's programs, and actually I'll answer one right up front, and that's about changing the length of the seasons or adding Sunday hunting. Both of those things are things that we've promoted in the past and can have an impact on deer populations, of course, but they don't affect where the hunting can take place. And because, as you heard, deer are homebodies, they kind of stay in one place during their life. Increasing the number of days doesn't do anything to places that you can't get to, regardless of how many days you have to do it. Can I pull out this map real quick?
Sure. But I think, unfortunately, while you were getting up to move your map, you ran out of time. If you need another few sentences to explain the maps to us.
These are just a blow-up of what you saw earlier. They show the 150-yard rule now with red shading, and then on the left side, I guess your right side, is the area as it would be with 50 yards, and you'll see a lot of open areas throughout, and this is Potomac area, and then also the Paint Branch area, kind of a blow-up of what you've seen earlier.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Gibbs? Delegate Resnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Gibbs, there was a question raised earlier about training and licensing of bow hunters. Even with the 150 feet right now, or 50 yards right now, are there a lot of people who are picking up a weapon without any training and going off and hunting?
I can only speak from my experience with people that I know, but yeah, bow hunting is extremely popular. The weapons have advanced quite a bit so that they're a lot easier to use, a lot more effective, a lot more accurate, and the opportunity to hunt is there, so people are picking up and using it. There are certain requirements that you have to take certain safety classes before you can get a hunting license. There are bow hunting safety courses that DNR offers.
So you do have to get licensed before you can purchase and use before you can purchase a license to hunt with a bow.
You need a hunting license.
Okay.
Yes.
And in places like, and to the extent that you communicate with your counterparts in Carroll and Frederick, has that lack of requirement that somebody be an expert bow hunter caused any issues in terms of danger to population, danger to pets, any incidents that have occurred as a result of lack of training?
Again, I would refer back to the DNR data that you've already heard. There have been virtually no accidents for bow hunting that anyone's aware of, other than the hunter themselves.
Thank you.
Delegate Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Real fast, just to make sure I'm clear on what was just discussed. There is no such thing as a license for bow hunting. Would I be correct in making that statement?
You need a hunting license in Maryland to hunt on any property other than your own property.
A generalized hunting course. And if my understanding from DNR is that that's a 10-hour course, would that be correct? Is it 8, 10 hours?
It's something like that. I don't know the exact hours.
Generalized hunting course.
Yes.
And then you're eligible to get a license to hunt.
Correct.
And as long as you're doing it the appropriate season, whether it's firearms or bow, that hunting license is what you would need, correct?
That's what you would need. There are additional trainings that you can take, and I would presume that a homeowner having a hunter come on their property would, ask, do you have these? And the more credentials that a hunter can present, the better
But
opportunity
quite
they would have.
frankly, you're saying if you invite someone to come on your property, if this law were to be enacted, then anyone with a bow who has a hunting license could come within 51 yards of a residence. Is that correct?
Only if you have permission to be on the property in the first place. So if the house is close,
If
and
you're
it's not
either
the
on public
property,
lands or
that-
if you're, yes,
that
yes,
is
you always
possible,
have to,
yes.
if you're on private property, you always have to
Right,
have
that is
permission.
possible.
Understood. All right, real fast question, and this has sort of been elusive. Any idea about numbers, how many additional deer would be harvested were this bill to be enacted? And if so, what is that? And in fact, how many deer would need to be harvested to have an impact on the populations of the herds?
It's going to vary from place to place. We do deer population surveys around the county at different park areas, and populations can range from 30 or 40 deer per square mile to over 200 deer per square mile. So the number of deer you would need to take would vary considerably according to that. As far as how many would be taken, I can't estimate a number, but I know many bow hunters who regularly take 10, 12 deer during a season. You've already heard testimony from a hunter who took more than one a day on average. So the impacts could be considerable in reducing deer numbers. I would
So-
expect they would be.
We don't have anything at all to quantify exactly what that may be.
No data that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Another question from Delegate Resnick, then Delegate Lee, and maybe some others.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, just to clarify something, because based on the conversation, I was actually confused about something. The 50 yards or the current 150 yards, is that the hunter or the arrow?
That is the hunter, and that hunter cannot shoot into that
So
safety
I
area.
technically could not stand 51 yards away from a residence and shoot into somebody's private property.
No, if you were 50 yards from a house, you would have to be shooting the opposite direction from that house. You would have to have
Assuming
the house
there's
at your back
assuming there's
and
no
shoot in
private
that
property in that other direction.
direction. Right.
So to be clear, the real aim of this legislation, it's really 50 yards from anywhere an arrow could possibly land.
In theory, that you're shooting the right direction, yes.
Okay, it's 50 yards from anywhere onto private property that an arrow could land.
Yes, you're not allowed to shoot into that 50-yard safety zone.
Right.
So, yes, the arrow should not enter that 50-yard
Okay,
zone.
thank you.
Delegate Lee.
Yes, I just want some clarity, and you might have already answered this question. To hunt on private property, you do not need under the current law to have a license or training or a certain age. Is that correct?
It would be better if DNR was answering those questions because they're the regulatory authority. But you do, if you own the property, you do not need a license. If you're hunting on any other property other than your own personal property, you do need a hunting license.
If you have been given permission by the owner to hunt on their property, do you need a license and training, and is there any age requirement?
You need a license, yes. In order to get a license in the state of Maryland, you need to have passed a hunter safety course. So in that respect, yes, you need to have that level of training.
Is there an age requirement too?
I don't believe there is. I'm not sure on that.
So if you owned a property yourself and you want to hunt on your own land, you do not need a license. Is that correct?
Correct. As long as meeting all of the other requirements, distance
Okay,
requirements and so forth.
Delegate Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gibbs, for being here this evening. Question I had for you is, this is called a safety zone. So is the intent of it to protect the property owner and whoever lives on that property, or is the intent to be able to affect hunters and give them, liberty as to what to do? What is the purpose of a safety zone? If you could answer for me.
I can give you my interpretation of it. The safety zone is to protect the area within the safety zone. You can't be within the safety zone. You can't shoot into the safety zone. That is a place that, if I'm standing in the safety zone and people are hunting any place that's legal, I should be perfectly safe.
Okay, so you would agree that it is to protect the property owner?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the other comment, if you could, that I'd like to share with you, do you believe that there has not been bow hunting accidents, so to say, in Carroll County and Frederick County, where it is the safety zone has been reduced? Could part of that reason be that the density in Montgomery County is far greater if we were to reduce the safety zone? As I understand, Carroll County's population is 167,000 residents. Frederick County is about 250. Montgomery County is 1 million. Do you think that, the density at all would play a factor into the safety here?
That's something I can't really answer, only to say that the 50-yard regulation will determine where you can hunt in what is being deemed a safe location. So the density of houses, and if you look at some of these maps, you'll see there are plenty of places where houses are close enough together. There is no 50-yard. There is no place that you can hunt that you wouldn't be 50 yards away. That's your safety factor. As far as when you get an increased density, that's sort of what this regulation does. It decides where the density is too dense to safely do this and where it's possible to do it safely.
Okay,
That makes
thank
sense?
you. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we have one opponent on this legislation, Maria Fusco. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. I hope you all have this in front of you. I'm not sure if you do or not, but if you do, this is me. It was on. Okay, I'm going to try to speak fast to get through this. I am speaking as a Montgomery County citizen whose neighborhood did have a managed hunt last year, and we are experiencing problems with that. I didn't bring pictures, but I mailed most of you some pictures. I will mail more. Also, what I have to say is not hypothetical, nor is it misrepresentation. One is, please know first, I do support controlling the deer population. However, I do not support neighborhood bow hunts. We had last year, when we had everybody there, we had serious problems. One, on trails being left in neighboring yards. That's the guts. They were gutted. They were left in the front yard. Other wildlife was coming. We have a 26% annual rise in coyote, which doesn't bother me because coyote are natural predators. However, we do have that, and coyotes will come, look into a yard. If they don't find it, they will go to other neighboring yards. Doing this for the season is potentially putting entrails in yards for up to 6 months of the year. 2, injured, traumatized deer travel further than 50 yards. My husband helped pull a bloody deer up from the road of a house that is about 60 yards back. 3, should homeowners and or homeowner associations have insurance, as many hunting organizations want? There's no real oversight. There's a breakdown in neighborhoods when you're for or against. There are solutions, which I have a suggestion. There is already the 150-yard. If we don't allow school hunting 300 yards from our school children now during the day, why would we allow it around their homes, day or night? Frederick and Carroll County has more of a hunting culture understood. Okay.
you. Are there any questions for Ms. Fusco? If not, Delegate Kramer?
I appreciate your testimony. Just real fast, was there anything that you wanted to get in real fast that you didn't have a chance to? Just because I'm interested in hearing the experience, quite frankly. So, just in a couple of seconds.
Okay, in a couple of seconds, we are having a real problem. Right now, our neighborhood is breaking up. We had deer that did go further than the 50 yards.
Can you turn your mic back on, please?
Sorry. We did have problem with the deer going more than 50 yards. In our neighborhood at 150 yards, it was only 3 houses in either direction that needed an okay. We had it. Other neighborhoods are also having it with the existing code that's in. If you do it to 50, I may not want to have a hunter in my yard. I can say no, which I am at this point with my experience. My neighbor next door can say yes. And there can be a hunter right there in that neighborhood, and I can't do anything about it, having my children and family there. That's part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, and thank everyone who came for this bill. We've started at 7. It's 8:10. We have 12 more bills on the agenda tonight. They each have fewer people testifying, so we'll probably move a little quicker. The next bill we have on our agenda is MC 114. Delegate Lutke, Montgomery County Barbershops Restriction on Operation repealed. And Dan, why don't you come up as the only person speaking on this as a supporter? Delegate Lutke, please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a law in the state code that Montgomery County barbershops are not allowed to be open 7 days a week. They can only be open 6 days a week. I think that's dumb. I think barbershops should determine their own hours of operation. I urge you to pass the bill. Thank you.
Delegate Lutke, I was going to challenge you to keep it under 30 seconds. That was fantastic. Mr. Wilhelm.
I'm going to keep it under 3 minutes, so it's going to move along. I'm Dan Wilhelm, Legislative Chair of the Civic Fed. The Civic Fed Executive Committee supports this bill. We think it is only fair to barbershops in the county to remain open 7 days a week rather than 6, since there is a limitation. Montgomery County is the only county in the state that has this current limitation. The public likes to be able to shop and obtain services all week long, and this bill would allow such service to be provided. It doesn't require a barbershop to be open each day, it just allows it. It also doesn't mean that individual barbers will be required to work 7 days a week, or even for that matter, 6 days a week. Most barbershops have more than one barber, and they would just need to develop a schedule to provide coverage for 7 days, but only require individual barbers to work 5 days a week. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you both for brief testimony. Are there any questions from any members of the delegation? If not, we will move on to the next bill. MC 1314, Maryland Tort Claims Act, Human Services Torts. Mr. Bates with county government here, obviously in support of this legislation. Please begin.
Good afternoon, R.C. Bates with Montgomery County's Government Relations Office. I'll be quick. This is a simple civil procedure bill. There are 2 conflicting parts of state law that deal with liability for child welfare cases in Montgomery County. This problem was created in 1996 when Montgomery County took over the child welfare from DHR. A recent case has brought it to light. We would like to get this fixed so that there's no delay in resolving these cases. The case that came up, the person sued the state. The state said, no, it should be dismissed because we're not doing that. It's the county. The court relied on another part of the law that said, no, it's the county. We're not changing the law. We're not changing liability. We're just changing how the thing moves through the system so the cases are heard in a timely fashion and everybody's notified. We hope it'll be non-controversial, and we urge your support for the bill.
Delegate Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bates, I'm trying to figure out under your bill what's going to change if we pass this bill.
What's going to change is right now it is not 100% clear that the county has to be included as a party in these cases. It is clear that the state has to be included. And so what happens is what happened in this case was the plaintiff notified the state treasurer, who is the state officer responsible for hearing these claims. The state treasurer did not notify the county. And instead, the Attorney General moved to have the case dismissed because the state treasurer is not responsible for defending the cases. It's the county government responsible for defending the cases. So the circuit court actually, on a summary judgment, dismissed the case. The Court of Appeals had to come back and say, no, the county steps into the state's shoes in this case. The county should have been included in the case. The county must defend the case and is liable for it. The county should be involved. The state should still get notice because they are the ones ultimately responsible. But we could have avoided this whole appeal up to the Court of Appeals if it had been very clear from the very beginning that both the state and the county should have been notified of the case.
So if there is a suit, then the county is going to be defending it. Is that correct?
The county will be defending it. If there's a judgment against the child welfare, the county will be paying it.
Does this change any limits on the amount of the judgment?
It doesn't change them. There are differences depending on whether the state or the county is the defendant. The state is much more limited in how much they have to pay than the county is, but does not change that law. Under current law, what happens is the state is the party being sued. The county steps into the state's shoes and defends and pays the judgment, but there's no change in liability.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. The next bill on the agenda, MC 1714, Delegate Gutierrez, Law Enforcement Vehicles, Automated External Defibrillators. And those here supporting the legislation, Mike Mage and my grad school classmate, Thomas Nephew. Delegate Gutierrez, you can begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill has been introduced before, and we are making the effort to introduce it again in view of the many situations that we've seen that had law enforcement officers had what are called automated external defibrillators, or AEDs. They would have prevented some cases of serious health consequences and even death. The bill, as drafted, is intended to refer only to Montgomery County. There, you will hear some of the objections being that it includes many other agencies, law enforcement agencies. That is not the intent. I'll be very happy to amend the bill to clarify that it is only intended for Montgomery County law enforcement vehicles. The state police does have some presence, and they do patrol, and you may hear some opposition for that. I'll be very happy to exclude them, though I hope that they do not have any situation in which they will regret not having an AED. There's a fiscal note also that I think overestimates the cost of having vehicles that have a law enforcement officer that has been trained in using AEDs, and all of Montgomery County officers have been so trained. The cost is, we think it's an overestimated one. We've done research. New Jersey has bought them in bulk and has found much more reduced prices. So I think we will ask for an amendment to the fiscal note to be more realistic in its cost. And finally, there is one recommendation that I'll be glad to amend the bill for. Instead of first responders, apparently the new term of art is emergency medical responder. So I will also change it to that. That basically is what the bill does, and we think that it is in the interest of our community in Montgomery County to have this prevention mechanism in place. So, Madam Chair, I will let my colleagues also make their points.
All right, Mr. Mage from the ACLU of Maryland, Montgomery County chapter.
Hi. This bill
And you please sit up so you can speak into the mic?
Sure.
Thank you.
This bill puts law enforcement in compliance with the constitutional duty to provide necessary care for persons in custody who suffer a cardiac collapse. Such collapse in the presence of police has happened in 2010, 2012, and 2013 in Montgomery County. The police have this constitutional duty to protect the life of those in their custody. When a person in custody has a cardiac collapse, that duty requires immediate access to a defibrillator. That is the American Heart Association guidelines talking. Hence, willful failure to provide police first responders with AEDs is a constitutional violation of this duty, and constitutional violations expose the violators to serious lawsuits. By supporting this bill, you can help protect Montgomery County from potential lawsuits that can dwarf the costs of compliance. I would like to give you just a couple of examples that in 2010, Mr. Kareem Ali had a sudden cardiac arrest on October 10th, 2010 in White Oak after being repeatedly tasered and pepper sprayed. The police started CPR, but they had no AED. When fire and rescue arrived 10 minutes later, it was too late. They restarted his heart, but he never regained consciousness and died 2 days later at Holy Cross Hospital. There was a similar episode in 2012 and 2013, and so we think you will be doing yourselves and the county a favor. We think that a single successful lawsuit will dwarf the cost of equipping police with AEDs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nephew from the Montgomery County Civil Rights Coalition.
Hi, I'm Thomas Nephew. I live in Tacoma Park and speak tonight as a member of the Montgomery County Civil Rights Coalition. We're strongly in favor of the MC 1714 law requiring patrol vehicles to carry AEDs. Our principal reason, of course, is that this legislation will save lives. The more first responders with AEDs, the better cardiac arrest victims' chances. There are going to be times when a police vehicle is on the scene before fire or medical vehicles already equipped with these devices, either by chance or sometimes by direct involvement in a cardiac arrest. Rochester, Minnesota Police Department has saved over 100 lives over 20 years with these devices. Having voiced our strong support for the bill's life-saving effects, we also note that the first principle of medicine applies here as well. First, do no harm. First, do nothing to bring about ventricular fibrillation and cardiac arrests. Ironically, tasers can do just that. They can bring about fibrillations AEDs are deployed to correct, depending on the subject, his or her pre-existing conditions, duration of use, and other conditions. They can bring about death. While taser advocates may well say that's unpredictable, we feel that's our point, not theirs. The average defibrillator used to jumpstart a human heart can range from 700 to 1700 volts. The average taser ranges from 20,000 to 150,000 volts. It's common sense to have AEDs on hand wherever tasers are nearby. It's also an obligation of legislators and policymakers who've allowed tasers to become the ubiquitous compliance tools, and frankly, according to the UN, the form of torture that are now deployed even in our schools. Returning to AEDs, then, not only are they life-saving devices, but they're ethical and moral obligations of the local and state governments that have chosen to deploy tasers. Please support MC 1714. Let's beat unnecessary tragedies and lawsuits to the punch.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Delegate Aurora?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Mr. Mage. I'm curious, it sounded like to me that you're making the argument that because police officers have a constitutional duty to protect those in custody. Therefore, it is a constitutional obligation to have police cruisers stocked with AEDs. Is that a correct understanding of what you're saying? Okay, so you're stating you believe this is a Supreme Court holding. Let me ask you, it's not unforeseeable that an individual would have another sort of medical event. Say hypothetically, police obviously carry weapons. They, from time to time, have to use force to incapacitate a suspect, and potentially even lethal force. Because that's possible, is there also a constitutional amendment that police cruisers stock, say, blood plasma from universal donors?
I'm not aware of that issue being in the courts. I don't know.
Okay, but my question was not about the courts. You said something was a constitutional imperative. So my question is, where is the line? Are the police required to carry EpiPens because someone in their custody may be stung by a bee and they may go into anaphylaxis? Do you see where I'm going with this? Where is this line?
I think the line is drawn in this case very clearly because it's the unanimous opinion of the medical community that and I'm quoting from the American Heart Association, early defibrillation is critical to survival from sudden cardiac arrest. The most frequent initial rhythm in witnessed sudden cardiac arrest is ventricular fibrillation. The treatment for ventricular fibrillation is defibrillation. And because time, end of quote, and because time is of the essence, with every additional minute, the chance of a save goes down. That in this case, the police, I think it's a reasonable interpretation of.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Resnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Aurora took one of my two questions, so I'll be quicker. You had said that the Supreme Court has already found that police are responsible for the care of the people in their custody. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you have also cited that over the last at least 5 years, there has been one incident of somebody dying of cardiac arrest in the custody of police without AEDs being in police cruisers. Have any of those cases gone to suit and been successful?
I said there were 3 cases.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 cases.
I'm aware of. There may be a 4th one. As far as I know, and I have heard that 2 of them are resulting in the filing of federal civil rights lawsuits. One of them, in the case of Mr. Ali, is in the courts now and is going through motions. I found that information on the PACER website of the federal courts. I don't know the status of the other one yet.
And is that case, is the issue of that case police action or police inaction? That Mr. Ali's condition was caused by police, therefore violating his civil rights, or the fact that they simply did not have an AED in the vehicle at the time?
I believe it's the former in that case.
So the question here is police action, whether the police directly caused Mr. Ali's condition rather than any equipment that they might have had in the vehicle.
I think it's both, because on the one hand, one of the issues to be litigated is whether they caused it to start with, and the second is whether they were negligent in not being able to deal with it once it happened.
Okay. And neither of those cases have gone to any conclusion yet, correct?
As far as 4 days ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Delegate Gutierrez?
Madam Chair, I just forgot to mention one other thing because it's related to the cost. I think most of the arguments are with the cost. There is no time frame for this mandate, and we have had previous conversations with Montgomery County Police, Montgomery County government. There is a plan for them to slowly be adding AEDs to cars, but we believe that at the rate that they're going, it will take a very long time before we reach the level necessary. This bill does not mandate that it be done in 1 year. It can certainly be spread out in a manageable way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There's one final question from Delegate Resnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Gutierrez, based on that last comment, so there's already a plan in place to put AEDs in cars over some period of time.
I'm not sure that there is a plan. They've started to. I think 9 of them are in place.
Okay, so we've gotten some in cars, and there's nothing in this legislation requiring any kind of timetable. So what does this bill actually do?
It would raise the issue to a higher priority for them to equip their cars.
Under this bill, could we take the next 10 years to equip the cars?
Montgomery County could decide that they are not going to go forth with implementing it, but we really think that that would be contradictory to whatever the will of our decision as a delegation and as a General Assembly.
Great, thank you.
Did you want to say something, Mike, to that effect? No?
They added 18 this year. At that rate, if they have 700 cars, it would take like 30 or 40 years to finish it. If they swap them out between shifts, it would take 10 to 12 years.
Which is an option, that they can move it from our cars.
Delegate Lutke with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Forgive me, but the statement that this bill is effective October 1st, 2014, wouldn't Montgomery County be in violation of the legislation if they didn't have AEDs in every car by October 1st, 2014?
The way that we drafted it was that it would not say that the exact date by which all the cars would have.
There's an effective date for the bill, and it's a shall be equipped with an AED. So as of the effective date of the bill, Montgomery County would need to have AEDs in every single car. I mean, if that wasn't your intention,
That was not
I guess,
my intended.
okay, so it could be
And
fixed through drafting, but doesn't, if the issue is speeding up the rate at which the county is putting AEDs in police cars, wouldn't it make more sense, instead of passing an unfunded mandate onto the county, for us to seek some grant funding perhaps from the state to increase the rate at which these AEDs are being put into these vehicles?
I don't think that there is any funding from the state that would be available for this. We've had this issue raised in the past, and there is no funds that I know of that would be targeted to this. When we passed the bill for defibrillators to be in public swimming pools, those were bought and installed immediately with our county money.
Right, but there are many fewer public swimming pools than police cars, I think, is the challenge.
And we're saying that it doesn't have to be in every car. We're leaving the judgment of how it's managed, so that that we're not spelling out to them how they need to manage it. The idea is to have the defibrillator available for those who are on patrol and who are also equipped with tasers.
Thank you.
Delegate Lee?
Yeah, as you recalled, many years ago, we did pass a bill to require all high schools, which was my bill, to have AEDs in every single high school. And at that time, of course, cost was indicated as an obstacle. But I think that I would recommend that you go back and talk with the physical note people, because I think since that time, AEDs have evolved. They're very sophisticated, they're very easy to use, and they're less costly now. In fact, they're in airports, shopping centers right now, and a lot of public facilities. And of course, they're in high schools. And they have shown to prove and to save lives. Now, under this legislation, could AEDs also be administered to individuals that are law enforcement, individuals that perhaps may suffer a sudden cardiac arrest?
Of course.
And also people, citizens that perhaps when they're cruising around, they may see someone having a sudden cardiac arrest. Because I know AEDs sometimes work when resuscitation does not, and when minutes matter. So maybe that's, would they be covered, would you be allowed to use AEDs in those cases too?
I think the bill does nothing to prohibit that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, we have Alan Goldberg here from the City of Tacoma Park in opposition. Thank you to the three of you who came up. I want to slide over to one of the mics that's already on.
This one's on. Okay. Good evening. I'm Alan Goldberg, Chief of Police for the City of Tacoma Park, formerly of Montgomery County Police for 31 years. And yes, I was here 4 or 5 years ago when this issue came up before. There's a couple things I would like to hit real quickly. One, it's an unfunded mandate. That's number one. When in my reading of the bill, there's absolutely nothing in it that specifies after that date that when it takes effect that it isn't a requirement. The other issue is, does this apply to all municipalities, or are we just targeting Montgomery County police vehicles? It doesn't say that. State police, United States Park Police, there's a host of federal agencies, other agencies that operate within this county as well, that would under this wording would be affected. For us, just so you know that in their representation about the price of the AEDs, the county has standardized, the Department of Fire Rescue and the Police Department has standardized on a Life Pack brand AED, which is considerably more expensive than the ones New Jersey bought, which are about somewhere around $800 to $900 a piece. These are almost $2,000 a piece. And then there's also the expendables, the pads and the batteries that have to be replaced periodically, not including the training costs and having to get officers recertified. And the reason we standardize on one type of AED is because when it hits the fan, basically, and you have to run out and put this on somebody, you need to know how to use that particular AED. I heard it mentioned about swimming pools and gyms and things like that. And what we found is airports, swimming pools, schools, any place where there's sporting events, large crowds, it's a lot more cost effective to put the AEDs where the people are going to be that are actually probably more prone to have these medical emergencies. What I've found in 34 years of policing is that very rarely do we witness cardiac arrest. I was actually on the scene of the one that Mr. Mage mentioned when I still work for the county. That is still under litigation, and there's a lot more to that event than we can go into tonight. I will say that I am not opposed to AEDs. I am just I'm opposed, as the City of Tacoma Park City Council is, to an unfunded mandate.
Thank you, Chief Goldberg. Are there any questions? Yeah, there are two questions. Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo and then Delegate Kramer.
Yeah, Chief, so you said you've been a police officer for 34 years. In that period of time, have you come across a situation where it would have been beneficial or saved a life?
No, not me personally. I have done CPR on people. Generally, an AED has to be deployed within the first 6 minutes. The other instant, most of the cases that we have where a person goes into cardiac arrest, it's usually respiratory arrest first and then cardiac arrest. And I'm also on the National Less Lethal Technical Working Group for the National Institute of Justice. I teach prevention of in-custody death. I am associated with the International Law Enforcement Forum for Less Lethal Force. And what we have determined through all the research is that when we have somebody that goes into cardiac arrest, they are in asystole. Asystole is a flat line. That means there is no fibrillation, no heartbeat. AEDs will not work, and actually no defibrillator will work because the defibrillator is a defibrillator. It stops ventricular fibrillation. If the person is flatlined, especially with an AED, which is automatic, it will not shock the person. So the solution is cardiac meds, which only a paramedic or a hospital can give. The other solution is CPR. And so in my experience, when you look at cost versus benefit, yes, you may save a life somewhere over a 20-year period, but it's very unlikely that you're going to be at the right place at the right moment with a police car. The other thing is, in Montgomery County, you have a very good fire department. Fire rescue services, every fire truck, every ambulance, every medic unit, battalion chiefs, they all have AEDs on board. We co-dispatch for drug overdoses, violent individuals that may be in an emotionally disturbed person. Those are the people that are the high target population that could have a cardiac arrest. They're also the ones that are probably the least likely that an AED will work on. That's where we need the cardiac meds and everything else, and that's why we have fire rescue co-respond with us.
Okay, so you haven't had a situation in 34 years, and I'm sure that you have talked to thousands of officers in that time. Do you know of any cases where any officers could have employed?
There are times I carried an AED for my last 2 years working with the county as a duty commander, and the only time I ever saw an AED pulled out of a cruiser was a gunshot victim at Lake Forest Mall, and an AED wasn't going to help that individual.
Delegate Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alan, I just wanted to say congratulations on your appointment as Chief of Police in Tacoma Park, and to say thank you for your service here in Montgomery County. You have been outstanding, and your appointment is well deserved, so thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this legislation? If not, we'll move on to the 9 bills related to alcohol this evening.
I might as well stay.
The rumor is not true. There's no alcohol being passed out tonight. MC 314, Delegates Aurora and Hucker, microbrewery licenses and Class D beer and light wine licenses. And then there's also 3 people here to testify, Julie Verratti, Paul Reinhardt, and Dan Wilhelm, if you could all come up as well. And thank you, Delegate Aurora.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hucker unfortunately cannot be here tonight. He's attending to a very important and new constituent of his, I understand. Madam Chair, this May, the Washington Post published the following. Craft beer, brewed in small batches in a variety of flavors and colors, is exploding in popularity in our area. This was made possible in part by a new law passed by the General Assembly last year, which allowed breweries to sell their product for on-site consumption. The Post mentioned 7 local microbreweries that were in the works to add to an already healthy number of successful options in that area they described. That Post, unfortunately, was talking about Northern Virginia and the plethora of microbrews that call that the Commonwealth home. MC 314 would allow the Montgomery County holder of a Class D license to be eligible for a Class 7 microbrewery license from the state. This would put Montgomery County onto similar footing as Virginia, as a location receptive to and supportive of the rapid growth in the market for craft beer, produced largely, of course, by microbreweries. It would do this by giving the DLC the discretion and the latitude in granting microbreweries the ability to sell their brew for consumption on the premises. If you've ever been to a brewery, typically there are tastings afterward. A few facts that you might find interesting about the craft brewing economy. One is that right now there are about 2,500 breweries in the United States, so 2,500 currently. There are 1,500 breweries in the planning stage right now and getting ready to launch. The amount of craft beer has doubled, that's been sold has doubled between 2005 and 2012. In fact, the mid-year growth of this year, so January through the end of June, is a growth of 15% in dollar sales and 13% in volume, putting this year on track to be the 4th consecutive year of double-digit increases in that industry. Economists predict that microbreweries will continue to flourish for years to come. The combined annual, the CAGR, the combined annual compound annual growth rate of that in the span of 2012 to 2016 is expected to be over 17%. In terms of economic development, I think there are a few points that we've heard many, many times in dealing with bills related to economic development, but I think are worth repeating. Were this industry to flourish in Montgomery County as it is in Northern Virginia, there are a number of benefits that I think are immediately discernible. One is sort of the direct revenue that comes from licensing fees from the 9% alcohol sales tax, from the beer excise tax, corporate and personal income taxes, so forth. Certainly, second, the taxes, well, the investment we get when that economic development happens in Montgomery County, when those incomes are going to Montgomery County residents and are then reinvested in the county. A couple things, a couple data points that might help put this into perspective. And it's hard to compare Montgomery County with another locality that's not, but we do have some data that I thought was interesting. For example, San Diego, which has a population of about almost 1.4 million, so just approximately a little bit over a third of Montgomery County. They had a economic impact studied in 2011 for the craft brewing industry, and they found an impact of $300 million. Sonoma County, California, probably, well, certainly much better known for its wine, had an economic study and saw last year $123 million in local impact, and it's expected to top $200 million this year. Successful craft breweries have been credited in numerous places for revitalizing the neighborhoods they go into. Oftentimes they will go into areas with lower rent, with more industrial type of areas, and they end up becoming destinations. They bring visitors to those areas. Two, I think, fairly well-known examples, but are useful at this point to think about are Harpoon Brewery. You may have seen that in a cooler case near here in South Boston, Southie, located there when there was not much around there other than auto body shops, and that brewery brings 85,000 visitors per year to that small area of South Boston that has about 35,000 people who live there. You may have been to Port City Brewing in Alexandria, not too far away. That brewery has, I believe, 9 tours per week. They are routinely fully booked. I learned that firsthand by not reserving before I came. These are folks who travel to an area of Alexandria that's not very well trafficked by folks heading there. There's not a lot of other business, but these thousands and thousands of people are heading there each year for the tastings there. I would love to imagine the day when that is the case for Baying Hound Ale Works in Rockville or Citizens Brewing Company in Silver Spring, when thousands of people were making those places destinations. And one final point just on the economic development, and we heard from the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and they've thought quite a bit about how to improve entertainment options in the county, amongst other things. And this is another thing I think that would add to the rich tapestry we hope to continue to weave in Montgomery County. A couple things to note about Virginia is that Virginia, they saw what was happening with the craft brewing economy. They saw this boom, and like many other states around the country, they enabled their breweries to sell their brew on the premises for consumption, just like we do for wineries here. As a matter of fact, you might have seen on Friday in the Gazette the nice article about how wineries are doing well, largely based on moves that the General Assembly has made in the past couple of years. And I'd like to think that microbrewing might be the next iteration of that sort of success. In Montgomery, we're not optimally poised at this moment for that to realize that success. And that's because of the posture of our law. Currently in Montgomery County, a microbrewery may only get the required license for on-premises consumption of its brew, that's a sort of Class B or Class H, if it's operating a restaurant. So as a practical matter, if you're considering starting a microbrewery and you want to have people be able to consume your product on the premises, you need to open up a restaurant, an entirely different business model, which requires its own capital, its own sort of staff structure and administration. In the alternative, if you did not want to do that, you could instead register as a Class 5 macro brewery, sort of the large breweries. They're unrestricted. That would allow you to have the ability to get a Class D license and have on-premises consumption of alcohol. However, because this is intended for large breweries, the annual licensing fee is 3 times what it would be for a microbrewery. And the General Assembly in 1988 opened up the microbrewery, or created a Class 7 microbrewery permit in order to allow small businesses to have an easier time getting off the ground. That's it. I mean, I'll just conclude here. I think that MC 314 would solve this problem by giving the DLC that flexibility to grant a Class D license to Montgomery County microbreweries, which allows just greater latitude and just more appropriate requirements for starting small business. This measure, of course, does not guarantee that Montgomery County would be the success, especially the overnight success that Northern Virginia has been in this sector of the economy, but I think it would help create the environment for growth, economic development, and a greater diversity of entertainment options here. I respectfully request a favorable report.
Thank you. Ms. Verratti?
Hi. Thank you, Chair Kaiser and Vice Chair Lee, for allowing me to submit my testimony this evening. And thank you, members of the delegation. My name is Julie Verratti, and I am a co-founder of Citizens Brewing Company, a startup brewery located in downtown Silver Spring. Silver Spring is my hometown. I'm lucky to have grown up here, buy a house here, and now found a business here. For better or worse, Montgomery County is in a geographic area where business owners have the ability to choose different jurisdictions to set up their companies. As elected officials and policymakers, you know how competitive this region is to incent business creation and retention. We researched the laws in Maryland and D.C. to determine where we would establish our company, and we chose Maryland. We chose Maryland because it provides the best legal framework for our business model. Thanks to the legislation that just came into effect in July, breweries are able to serve pints over the counter to customers and also distribute beer to other bars and restaurants. This makes Maryland unique in the region, and that's a great thing. However, despite this progress at the state level, Montgomery County's liquor laws are barriers to our success. We are opening an urban brewery with a tasting room because we want to enable our customers full experience of craft beer. When we began writing our business plan last January, we did not want to serve food. Our company's expertise involves brewing beer, not running a restaurant. The current law says that Class 7 microbreweries with tap rooms have to have either a Class B or Class H license, both of which require food sales. This has required us to partner with a restaurateur to run the kitchen, creating more complexity when it comes to legal fees and paperwork filing. A Class D license is ideal for a brewery tap room model without food, and we respectfully ask that the delegation support changing the law accordingly by supporting MC 314. I have other recommendations in my written testimony that have the support of the DLC. I do hope that you will take a look at those suggestions after the hearing. We're excited to be opening in Silver Spring. We're eager to grow and stay here, create new jobs in the county, and pay a living wage and offer health benefits to our employees. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reinhardt, Bang Helm Ale Works.
Hi, I'm Paul Reinhardt. I own currently the only Class 5 brewery in Montgomery County. And it's been an interesting ride over the last 3.5 years. A lot has changed. As you mentioned earlier, July 1st of this year, some new legislation went into effect allowing Class 5 breweries to serve pints. Well, we're not quite there yet. We have to get our Class D. What I'd really love is if we could pay for a Class 7 brewery license as opposed to what we have, because we're currently paying, what is it, $1,500, and the Class 7 is $700. And to give you an idea of how small we are, we produce 1-barrel batches. 1 barrel is 31 U.S. gallons, whereas places like Dog Brewing Company or Flying Dog, they're producing these much larger quantities of beer. And I'm paying the same amount for licensing, even though I'm not even breaking 250 barrels per year. And I probably manufacture in a year what they might spill on bottling day. And that's about it.
Well, I think you have unanimous support that anyone spilling beer is doing something bad. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilhelm from the Civic Fed. Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to be speaking a lot tonight. Most of your bills that you're considering tonight are dealing with alcohol, as you said earlier. The Executive Committee supports this bill. Currently, in order for a microbrewery to sell its product for on-sale consumption, it has to be addition to a restaurant. The government does not place this extraordinary burden on wineries. Many residents would like to be able to try new kinds of beer and, if desired, to purchase them for home consumption. Since they would be licensed, the Department of Alcohol Control would still need to confirm that a microbrewery is qualified to have a normal beer wine license. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Several questions, starting Delegate Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Aurora, thank you for bringing the bill. And as you said, up until recently, we had to be a restaurant to do this. Now, a few years ago, we did make an exception for Worcester County, and they did Class D. Now, what happened in that case, they did limit it to on sale. So I want you to think about that, whether you want to limit it to on sale or not, because when you get into off sale, they operate like package stores, and I don't think that's your intent.
No, I don't think that's the intent here, and that's actually not something I've considered. The way this business model seems to be structured typically is that the bulk of the dealings are with retailers. They're going to be from the microbrewer to the retailer. Right. Certainly, there's the ability to fill growlers or 22s for off sale, but it's not a package store.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Delegate Lutke.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reinhardt, Ms. Ferretti, thank you for coming. You guys have at least 5 people watching Montgomery County Cable right now, so this is free advertising. Bang Hound is in Rockville, and where are you guys opening up Citizens?
We're going to be in downtown Silver Spring, about a half mile from the metro.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for coming to testify tonight.
Are there any questions? Yeah. Delegate Resnick.
Thank you. Very quickly, and I apologize, I might be dense tonight, but I'm a little lost in the alphabet soup that is our class licenses.
You and the rest of Maryland.
Class 5, Class 7, Class D. What does this bill actually do?
Sure. Okay, so there are two state licenses in play here. Class 5 brewery, that's kind of an unlimited brewer's license. A Class 7 is the microbrewery license. It's 1/3 the cost, and in exchange for that, you have a certain limitation on how much you can brew. In terms of for off sale, I think it's like 22,500 barrels. In terms of for consumption on site, there's also limitations. The idea is you're a smaller entity. You're going to get a break on the licensing fee. In exchange, you're not a high volume producer. So those are the state levels. Now the county, of course, has its. Maybe there's someone here from the DLC. The county has its way of licensing, and including so the Class B, which includes essentially restaurants with a larger sort of purview, and we'll hear, I think, at least 2 bills about that later tonight, about what a Class B is. The Class D allows more flexibility. For example, you could have a tavern-style license, is what some people call it, where they don't have to have a restaurant. Maybe you provide food that's packaged, like nuts, chips, that sort of stuff. But it allows more flexibility. It doesn't require, for example, a restaurant that has a 50% allocation in terms of revenue from food versus beverage, which in a microbrewery, that's going to be very, very difficult to achieve unless it's a brew pub, like a Gordon Biersch.
So a very quick follow-up. So what this bill does is it says that if you are a microbrewery producing small batches, you could sell out the door.
This would allow the DLC to do its process for Class Ds. It's enabling in that way. Still, I mean, anyone who's a license holder would have to go through that process, I presume. I've never gone through it, but I know from people who have, it's not an automatic process that you granted a license.
But the goal being is you have a microbrew, you can sell out the door without having a restaurant.
Well, the real goal is to be able to sell to visitors. You can already sell out the door via retailers. The goal is when someone takes a tour, they can order a pint of your brew.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kathy Durbin here from DLC. Was there anything else that needed to be added? And if so, did you want to come up to the table to answer the last question? Or apparently Delegate Aurora did a great job. Good job, Delegate Aurora. Are there any other questions for Delegate Aurora or the panel up here? If not, thank you all very much. The next bill, Delegate Barkley, MC 614, Alcoholic Beverage Sales, Prohibition on Use of Self-Scanning Cash Registers. I see you got 21 of us as your co-sponsors on this bill.
Who hates the bill?
Can we take a vote?
And then thank you, Mr. Wilhelm, for staying up there as the one supporter on this bill. All right, Delegate Barkley.
Madam Chairwoman, you did a nice job, and as you can see, we passed a similar bill last year for Prince George's County. It was a local bill, and at that time, after we passed the bill, I asked all of you to sign on to the bill for a potential Montgomery County bill. You all agreed to sign on, so therefore the bill is here tonight. Basically, my reason for putting the bill in is I'm trying to limit access to minors to alcohol. And with a self-scanning register, it just makes it so much easier to bypass the system and for them to do it. And I think that's what this bill does. Someday, it may be in the far future, I'm not sure, we're going to have alcohol in all grocery stores. And at that point, this bill is really going to be important. But in the meantime, it's only 3 stores in Montgomery County. I would ask you to support the bill so we can take care of future needs.
Thank you, Delegate Barkley. Do we have a question? Delegate Hickson?
Delegate Barkley, I'm a co-sponsor, and I agree with what you're saying. This county, are you sure? Is this the first time we're following Prince George's County's lead? As I'm getting, I want to just.
I'm not sure about first time, but it was a good delegate in Prince George's.
Oh,
So.
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wilhelm.
I'm not going to bother reading my testimony. You can have it, but it's basically saying the same thing you just heard. So we support the bill. It makes sense to protect, only have people of the appropriate age buy the alcohol. So.
All right, thank you. Delegate Cullison with a question.
So, my question is just it's a practical one. So when the grocery will automatically reject a code, is that how it will work?
Supposedly everything stops when they try to ring up alcohol, and then when a cashier or somebody has to come over, check the ID, and so forth. But most of the time there's like up to 6 6 self-checkouts with only 1 person paying attention. So I think it could be a problem.
Is it possible?
Just, we're right here.
Is it possible? Oh. I mean, I'm assuming there's the barcode would allow them to not sell it through at all. They could just automatically stop at that point. I mean, is that something that could be worked out with the stores?
Well, right now the register is supposed to stop, and
okay, so
and then
won't.
somebody's supposed to come over. Whether it always works that way, I'm not sure.
Delegate Barkley, I certainly know that when I buy wine at the grocery store, and I'm fortunate to live near 2 of the 3 that are in the county, that if you go through the self line, it always beeps and makes somebody come over, though I am a co-sponsor and think this is a good idea, and I think your concern is a good one, that it would cover the problem in later stages if that beeping didn't happen or the employee wasn't there.
Correct.
Are there any questions for Delegate Barkley or for Mr. Wilhelm? If not, the next bill, moving right along, MC 714, Delegates Barkley, Gilchrist, and Miller. So thank you, Delegate Barkley, for staying there. Alcoholic beverages, special beer, wine, and liquor license for community performing arts facilities. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, there are 3 people testifying: Cindy Majane, Alice Nappy, and Dan Wilhelm.
Good to see you, Dan. Thank you, Madam Chair, and you all have a written testimony in front of you, so I'm not going to read everything in the bill. Basically, I brought the bill forward because of a request from Black Rock Center for the Arts about doing a community performance arts facility license. We've already done a license for the bigger facilities like Strathmore and Fieldmore and Silver Spring, but the smaller facilities, the only thing they can do is go and get a 1-day license. So consequently, even though the 1-day license is only $30, both of these, Black Rock and Viz Arts, they've been spending thousands of dollars on 1-day licenses because they're doing a lot of it compared to what we used to do. So this bill will take care of the small performing arts facilities, and I really believe that those facilities are the gemstone in our community, and we must do everything we can to support them. This will allow an annual license. It's a $750 fee for the year, period. It'll save them a lot. They still need to do all the training of the employees about handling alcohol and so forth. And there's other provisions in the bill. There's definitions of what a community performing facility is. There's capacity limits that tells you who's eligible, sets hours of operation. and also says the board cannot transfer the license from one facility to another, and also says you must provide food when we're doing this. With me tonight, Delegate Gilchrist and Delegate Miller are co-sponsors. Delegate Gilchrist is up here. I asked him if he wants to say a few words. Okay. And also I have with me Cindy Majan, is that how you say it? With BlackRock, and Alice Napper from VisArts. Cindy, you want to start?
Hi, my name is Cindy Majane. I'm the events manager at BlackRock Center for the Arts. We offer a wide range of performances, receptions, and classes. There can be 60 events in a season requiring this one-day license, which is very time-consuming to process, and we spend close to $2,000 a season on them. There's sometimes last-minute opportunities to bring in an artist or have a reception that we can't really adequately cover. It would be appropriate to serve concessions at some of them, but maybe not time to get a license through, so we do miss that opportunity. The existing special theater license doesn't work for us, as we also rent our space for meetings, recitals, and other events. And this special theater license would require BlackRock to purchase the alcohol for all the other third-party events as well, which we don't want to do, and our clients don't want us to do either. So we're stuck with the one-day licenses. The MC 714 would save us significant time and money, and BlackRock Center for the Arts supports this bill and really thanks everyone who's helped bring it forward. We appreciate your support very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Nappy?
Good evening. My name is Alice Nappy. I'm the Executive Director at VisArts, Community Arts Organization in Rockville Town Square. Mission of VisArts is to engage the community in the arts through education, gallery exhibitions, special performance programs, and resident artist program. During the past 2 years, VisArts has been offering a variety of one-night arts workshops, classes in ceramics, painting, drawing, jewelry making, and fused glass. These project-based classes mostly include a glass of wine as part of the experience, and they have proven to be a highly popular way of engaging large numbers of people in the creative activities that expose them to different media without having to make a long-term commitment. So people like to take these one-night classes instead of taking a series of classes, and we offer them on Groupon, Living Social, and Amazon Local. During FY 2013, we estimate that more than 6,000 people participated in these one-night art events. We now host in our event room a monthly comedy club, events from the DC Shorts Film Festival, live music, performances, poetry readings, and other art activities where we serve beer, wine, and alcohol. For each of these events, VisArts applied for and was approved to receive a Montgomery County, for the mumbo jumbo here, Class C special alcoholic beverage license. We spent approximately $6,300 in fees for these one-day licenses, which is nearly more than $4,000 more than a for-profit restaurant would pay for its annual beer, wine, and liquor license. The ability to apply for an annual performing art liquor license would be a huge cost savings to VisArts and would also eliminate the staff resources involved in applying, filing, and picking up the one-day licenses. In addition, an annual performing arts license would eliminate the need for VisArts to remove all alcohol off-premise following every event. This mandate, which is required under state law for one-day license holders, proves to be cumbersome and inconvenient and eliminates our ability to purchase alcohol in bulk, which is usually more cost-effective. I had the great honor of serving as a member of the county's Nighttime Economy Task Force this year, and we looked at a number of ways to foster increased nighttime social life for residents, employees, and visitors to the county. As co-chair of the Venue Operations and Safety Subcommittee, I learned a great deal, and frankly more than I wanted to know, about liquor licensing in the county, and I heard many suggestions on how to make it more efficient, user-friendly and beneficial to restaurants and other venues. The Performing Arts Liquor License is just one example of the different licensing options that the Department of Liquor Control can create to meet the needs of the community. VisArts has been pleased to partner with the DLC and Kathy Durbin and her great staff on creating this license in response to the growing trend in our community to combine arts and entertainment. We urge your support of this bill.
Thank you. Mr. Wilhelm.
Yes, I'm Dan Wilhelm again. got, I think, 1 or 2 more bills to go. We support this bill. Right now, there's 2 arts facilities that have such a license, Strathmore and Fillmore. We think it's only fair that the smaller venues also have this ability, and particularly hearing the current testimony about the hassle factor of getting one-day licenses, that's even more reason to do it, because these guys, I'm sure, are not working on big margins, so anything to reduce their cost would be help the public. So we support this bill.
Delegate Resnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly, and Delegate Barkley, please don't allow these comments to seem like I don't support the bill, because I do. But instead of creating a new license, wouldn't it be easier to simply amend the current facilities license law just to have one less license to have to worry about?
I guess that would be a possibility, and we'll take a look at it, but I think we charge them a much bigger fee because they're a larger facility.
Okay.
So we're trying to keep the cost down as much as we can.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Before I pass the question on to Delegate Gutierrez, Ms. Durbin, was that an accurate answer? I was seeing... Can you come up to the table to answer the question? Again, we need the the audience at home to be able to hear your answer.
Okay, the biggest difference would be that the amount of seating, there was a difference in that, that they, in the initial investment in the facility. So there was a mandated investment put forth with the original performing arts for Strathmore, and then it was lowered a little bit, I think, for Fillmore, but it was like in the millions. It was a lot of money.
Let me, if I could follow up it.
Also, there's a minimum seating. I'm sorry.
Okay, couldn't we bifurcate the license then, and just say for X size facility versus X size facility, I'll get the same license? It just seems like all we ever do here when it comes to new liquor laws is create new licenses more and more and more, and they just become even more. I mean, the bill that we heard, Delegate Aurora's bill on microbreweries, right. It sounds like we have 14 different licenses just for microbreweries. It seems a little absurd, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we can make it a little easier.
Right. I think the main difference was this really was more for the arts, and that's how it began with especially with Viz Arts and stuff when we were working with them, where the other venues were more for entertainment. And even though they are morphing a little bit into that, it was a smaller venue, and we were just looking at a smaller type license. I mean, I'm sure we could probably try. I know that we worked on, and there was a couple differences that seemed to be too much of an impediment, and this seemed to be more focused on the community factor.
Okay, it's fair enough. I'm just looking to see if we can make it easier. If we can't, it's fine.
Right, and the microbrews on the state level, there's 2 different types of microbrews, so that's not even anything to do with our licensing, unfortunately.
Delegate Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's on. Along the same lines, before we come back next year and find that there's another small group, I'm wondering, for example, AFI, they have events, Olney Theater, Round Top. There are other small venues. Would these be included, or are we narrowing it to the visual arts?
Actually, the Olney Theater has a small theater license that was created years ago, and it's beer and wine only. It's just for before performances, during intermission, and after performances.
AFI?
No, that's for the Olney. That was
No.
for the small theater license. AFI has a license as well.
And what is that license?
What license they have? I can't remember which license offhand they have, but they do have a license of beer and wine.
It's another beer and wine?
Yeah, beer and wine only. This would be beer, wine, and liquor.
Okay. So have we thought of everything else that might be missing? Thank you.
Always new trends.
Capacity outlined in the bill may take care of that if you take a look at that.
Yeah, if you add some flexibility in the language, that would be good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? If not, thank you all very much for coming. MC 914, Delegate Kelly, alcoholic beverages, beauty salon license. We have 3 people testifying, Dan Wilhelm, of course, but before that, we have Courtney Barfield from the Dry Bar and Larissa O'Donnell, a private citizen. So Delegate Kelly, if you could begin first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the delegation. I'm sorry to bring you another alcohol bill, but this one is very close to my heart. So hopefully you will consider it favorably. This legislation establishes a beer and wine license for salons, which we currently don't have. And actually, I know you might be wondering why on earth would we need one for salons, but in fact, it's a new trend, and we have opened in Bethesda, which is my district, and Vice Chair Lee's district, something called the Dry Bar. The folks from the Dry Bar are here to talk to you today. What they do is they blow dry your hair, and in the other locations in the country, they're able to offer you a free glass of wine while you're getting your hair blown out. There's actually a location not very far from my home in Georgetown, and they're able to do this. And when I was in there getting my hair done one day, the woman sitting right next to me was getting her hair washed and said, you know, I really prefer to go to the Georgetown location because they can give me wine. And that really got my competitive spirit riled up. So I think that we need this license. I know. It's true. It's getting you all too. I know it. So Courtney's going to tell you a little bit more about how their business model works. But we did think of other establishments in the county that might also want this, and Kathy Durbin was incredibly helpful in developing this, so I want to thank her. But there are other salons that maybe when catering to a bridal party, for example, might want to give a glass of champagne to the bridal party. I know there are a couple of salons in my district that are interested in that, and I've talked to some folks in other parts of the county who are interested in opening up similar blow-dry type establishments. So there is a need for this, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Courtney from the Dry Bar, and she'll tell you how their business works and why we need it. Thank you, and I urge your support, please.
Thank you. Ms. Barfield.
Hi, my name is Courtney Barfield. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be here this evening. I am the manager of Dry Bar Bethesda, and basically what we do, it's very simple, no cuts, no colors, just blowouts. It's kind of a swanky hangout where you can come and get your hair blown out, watch chick flick, and listen to some fantastic music and just unwind. We currently have 32 shops across the country, and 31 of them serve alcohol. We are the only ones that do not. So basically what's happening is I am watching business being driven directly into the Georgetown location. We are one of the only few stores on Bethesda Avenue that have clientele coming inside of our store from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. On the regular with a line out the door. We want to be able to open more locations in the Montgomery County area, and the only thing holding us back is actually this problem. We are really, really hoping that you could grant us the ability to serve a 6-ounce complimentary glass of either white wine or champagne. That's all we want to be able to serve, and we have so many people across the country coming into our store that have been to other Dry Bar locations and are highly upset. It's the one negative comment that we get actually out there on social media is the fact that Montgomery County does not allow us the ability to have alcohol. And 7 women coming in for a bachelorette party and then finding out that they're not allowed to have a glass of wine makes for an extremely bad experience. The Georgetown location basically books 2 to 3 parties a month, and we have booked none simply because of the alcohol. We are continuing to do thousands of clients each week. We are driving a massive amount of business into our store, into the area, and we are also employing a ton of people, and we want to continue to do that, and we're really just hoping that you can allow us to have a 6-ounce complimentary glass of champagne or white wine, and that's why we're here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Miss O'Donnell, if you could turn your mic on.
Hi, I'm Larissa O'Donnell. I've actually been with Dry Bar for 3 years now. I actually started with the company while under the age of 21, so I was actually very excited when I turned 21 and can celebrate my 21st birthday in one of the locations in California. I'm from store number 7. I've seen this company employ hundreds and thousands of, employees, and like Courtney said, we do want to open more locations in the area. We have a 14 chair shop, so our employee to chair ratio, we actually have 60 employees. The busier we get, the more employees we need, greater the job opportunities. So, being able to open more locations in the area, especially with a 14 chair store, the possibilities and the job opportunities are endless, especially with the growth in the company. We have a corporate location in New York, and we also have a corporate location in California. Hopefully, if we get enough stores, we can have a corporate location in Montgomery County. So we will stop shoveling clients down and business down into Georgetown. Georgetown, they blow out about 222 services in one Saturday. We could double that because we have 2 more chairs. Therefore, shoveling the business into into businesses surrounding us, because when you get your hair done and you feel good and you have a glass of wine and you look good, you don't want to go home. You want to go home to the kids or, to the husband or the boyfriend. You want to go out with the girls. Therefore, you are having business, and you're putting business into the bars or into, the malls or the movies. And I think, that the businesses surrounding could really benefit, as well as the job opportunities that could potentially be put into Montgomery County.
Mr. Wilhelm.
I'm one of those people, I guess they were talking about earlier, why do we need this bill? And when we talked about it, I don't set foot in a beauty salon. And the guys on the executive committee were the same boat I am, but the women on the executive committee wanted this thing and said they would like to be able to get a glass of wine or champagne or whatever on an occasional basis. So we're supporting the thing for the women in our group.
Thank you.
Ms. Barfield, I have a question.
Yes.
Understanding that at all your other stores, it's just the one complimentary drink, so I couldn't then go and get my hair done and have 2 drinks. Is that?
No, we try to keep it to one complimentary drink.
One
Our goal is
compliment-
not to get people drunk. It's just to relax. Basically, you're there for 30 to 40 to 45 minutes. So there's a time frame that we like to turn our chair.
Because someone was also asking the question up here about whether someone could buy that second glass. I'm thinking if I'm going with a bachelorette party, I might want more than 1 drink.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stop at the more than 1 number.
Yes.
We are televised.
It's very possible. Like I said, we like to keep it to 1. You're not there for an hour, 2 hours. Everything that we do is a turn per chair. Every time we turn the chair, we make more money. So our goal is to keep you there, a good 35 to 45 minutes, all while chatting with you. You can watch a movie. There's your friends there. So there's a lot more going on than just actually the glass of wine. And I'd like to say, too, Bethesda location is actually one of the largest locations in the country. So we do have a 14 chair. We have the ability to really drive a massive amount of more clientele into our business. And this is the one thing that, we really need.
We have quite a few questions.
Yeah.
First, we'll start with Delegate Resnick.
Sounds good. Ms. Barfield, how do you legitimately want alcohol at a place called the Dry Bar?
Well, it's no pun intended. Everyone walks in and says, this really is a dry bar. So
I'm actually just kidding, but there is a serious question. Delegate Kelly, back to my earlier point on previous bills, next year, salons are going to want to sell it. So can we just take a look at the way that we do these licenses, and maybe, if there's no objection from the county, do an expanded bill and not have to come back with another alphabet soup class license next year?
I'm certainly happy to look at that. I know, Kathy, you have a... Sorry, I just want to bring in the expert on this because she's very helpful.
Kathy, do you want to stay up here
helping us
for all the
determine.
next 5 or 6 bills? There's a seat next to Dan. Yes.
Well, technically, you are selling it. So anytime you sell a service, and if alcohol is involved, at the state of Maryland, it's considered a sale anyway. So you don't have to change anything.
So
Something we
presumably,
can
if
say.
another hair salon, because this will obviously apply not just to a place that blow dries, but any hair salon, barber shop, even if they're open on Sundays? He's not even paying attention.
Barbershops are actually explicitly excluded for some reason, having to do with the. Yeah. but we'll take that amendment if you guys want it.
All right, back to Delegate Resnick's
But
question.
the legitimate question here being that if they wanted to sell alcohol, they could, should this bill pass.
They couldn't set up a bar, but they could, certainly if somebody wanted a second glass of wine or another drink or something like that, they would work it out as part of the service. So it's easy to do, but.
So it'll be warm, basically.
No, it wouldn't be. But it would be just like it is now. The champagne would be cold, would be chilled now, right?
Right.
So the second glass could be chilled as well.
They just couldn't have a physical bar in place. They won't be able to mix drinks.
I don't think that wasn't the intent.
Okay.
I don't think that
But
it would be
they
the
would be
intent.
able to sell if they wanted to sell. So if another salon had a business model where there was the sale of beer and wine involved, that could happen.
That's not the intent of this bill. It really isn't.
But if the
so
bill
I
should
don't know
pass,
if you want
that
to.
But if the bill should pass,
Right.
as currently drafted, that could happen.
They couldn't set up a bar, but they could give away another drink. They could give away more than one drink. But
Okay.
they couldn't set up a saloon area, like a bar area.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Delegate Lutke.
My question was just about the gender bias of excluding barbershops here, because I don't really do chick flicks and blowouts. So would you be okay to expanding it to allow barbershops to do the same?
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to do so if you find that would be.
Thank you, Delegate Kelly.
Delegate Barkley.
I would just, to respond to Delegate Resnick, you sound like you want to turn this into a bar type thing. If you are, then we really got to take a closer look at this bill. And the $100 fee certainly would not go if that's what we're actually going to be doing. So we would need to take a look. That's not the purpose of this bill, and I think we ought to keep it very limited because we're not setting up another bar. This is maybe called a bar, but that's not what we're doing. And I guess my question to you, Delegate Kelly, because I can just see my subcommittee with this bill now. But anyway, Courtney mentioned that the hours of operation are till 10 p.m. In your bill, it says it could go to midnight. Why did you pick midnight?
All I said was not till the same hours as the regular bar, so I think you all just randomly, I don't know that it was a.
If you would be more comfortable with 10, we could change it to 10. I think that we were just working with something there, but.
Okay, I think
You think
I
10
think you're
would
trying.
be
To,
easier.
I'm trying to make a point. It's not a bar.
Not a bar.
And when you talk about midnight, I think of bars. 10 p.m. Okay, maybe a hair salon.
We actually close at 8 Monday through Wednesday, and Thursday through Saturday we now close at 9, and Sundays we close at 7.
Okay, so we might want to talk about amending that. I think
Yeah.
it might make it easier down the road.
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Delegate Kelly. I'm sorry, Delegate Kramer. I'm looking straight at you, and I'm thinking of Delegate Kramer.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Delegate Barkley was saying, that I think we have to keep it very, very tightly drafted in the way it's done, because clearly the opportunity to exploit, and quite frankly, next it'll be the tanning salons and the nail salons, and then we're, it kind of, so I could see the slippery slope here, and this does need to proceed with caution, but, and so I appreciate Delegate Barkley's comments there. Thank you.
Speaking of the slippery slope, I would think I'd like to amend your bill to include nail salons. Thank you for that idea, Delegate Kramer. Any other questions? Delegate Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a quick question for Ms. Durbin, and let me just say for the vast viewing audience, your office is phenomenal in helping us understand the patchwork of laws, both the state and as we've done in the county. I know that some establishments will allow you to bring in, that don't deal with food or alcohol, will allow you to bring in alcohol to have as drinks. Is that different from an establishment providing free drinks? Because it seems like the latter would require a license or some sort of exception.
Right. In Montgomery County, you're allowed to bring a bottle of wine in if it's not on that. That was passed last year.
Sure, the
It's not-
corkage. I'm thinking, there are, there's a
not-
chain of cigar shops that advertise they have a club and you can bring in whatever. Yeah.
not in Montgomery County.
Oh, I see.
It's not permitted.
I see.
If there's one in Montgomery County, let me know. No, it's not permitted.
I see. Okay, thank you very much.
If there are no other questions. Thank you, Delegate Kelly. Thank you to your panel. The next bill with, I think we just had Melanie Wanger testifying, MC 1114, Alcoholic Beverages, Montgomery County Beer Festivals. Melanie and Kathy, thank you.
Hi, for the record, Melanie Winger with Montgomery County, and this is a county-sponsored bill, and it does duplicate something that is in the law, but it does something different. It creates the opportunity to have 4 beer festivals in a given year in Montgomery County. And currently, wine festivals are allowed, and the statute for the allowance of beer festivals is identical to that for wine festivals, which I think have been offered in the county for about 7 years and have been proven to be quite successful. So at the request of a number of people via the DLC, the county agreed to create authority to do the same thing for beer in order to promote beer produced in Maryland as we do for wine here in the county.
If I could ask a question based on something being set up here. Kathy, can you tell us where the wine festivals are currently happening in the county to give people that background?
In Rockville Town Center, the city of Rockville sponsors Uncorked, and they actually had, I think, 45 wineries this year. It's grown. I think they might even have to move this coming year because it's grown in size. But it's usually in the Rockville Town Center, and they've celebrated 6 years. It's great. It's wonderful. King Farm also has an event annually. They've done it for 4 years. And then the Kentlands also have held events. I think they've done it 3 or 4 years.
Do I understand it's only Maryland wine?
Yes.
And only Maryland beer?
Well, the micro brews, you know, are mostly Maryland, or maybe, you know, I think it would be okay if somebody was brewing someplace else, but it's really meant to celebrate Maryland products. The bill allowed for a beer and wine off-premise to be part of the event as well. 7 years ago, that wine bill. So we have had Gillies and a couple of other off-premise and be involved, and they've had other products, but mostly local products. And that's what we want to celebrate.
Delegate Resnick has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Melanie, how is this different from the 2 Oktoberfests we have every year? We have one in the Kentlands, we have one in Germantown. They do have a beer tent.
Right. I can tell you. They receive one-day event licenses, and they have beer areas, little roped-off areas for when, you know, in different types of beers. So it's just a one-day license.
These 4 festivals would also be one day, technically, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and one days can be unlimited amount of days. You can have up to 4 days or 5 days, whatever it is. So sometimes the Oktoberfest have gone 1 or 2 days as well.
And it would be you wouldn't have a roped-off area. The point of the festival would be the beer, not the marketing stands, basically.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the bill itself, I don't see where it requires the festival organization to get a license. It's just the vendors. Is that true?
No, the umbrella organization receives the license.
Okay, so
and
it
then
does.
the other vendors receive licenses as well under that umbrella organization. So they work with them, they invite them, and so it's $30 a day for each vendor as well.
Okay, so the overall organization does have a license?
Right.
Okay, I didn't see that in there. I want to make sure it was there. And the other thing I would say, I know we've done beer festivals in several other counties, and I would just ask you might want to take a look at what the other counties have done to make sure, because there's kind of a template that we've been following.
Right. We actually we called the Maryland Brewers Association and spoke with J.T. Smith.
J.T. Smith, yes.
And asked him which county he thought was the best at this point, because some of the bills are very old and cumbersome. Right. And so we looked at Baltimore County and mirrored a lot of what they were doing, and also what was working for our wine festival bill as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you both very much. Dan, if you could come back for 1214, I have introduced MC 1214, alcoholic beverages regarding Class B beer, wine, and liquor license. This was brought to me by the Civic Federation, by Dan himself. Thank you, Dan. Right now, we have a limit of 2 licenses per establishment in the county. We've made many exceptions over the years to allow for when we've wanted to help in Germantown area, when we've wanted to help in Route 29 corridor and so many other places, we have exceptions for additional licenses. This bill would essentially eliminate that limit. It would be unlimited. The licenses that are now $2,500 for the first one and $5,000 for the second would just be $2,500 for both. There will be amendments forthcoming just to ensure that we maintain the desired restrictions and yet allow for unlimited Class B beer, wine, and liquor licenses. And when I refer to the desired restrictions, certain areas of the county, Washington Grove, Damascus, Kensington, and a few others have their own particular restrictions. We're not eliminating those. We're just allowing for multiple licenses by the different chain restaurants and others. So, Mr. Wilhelm.
We were, the Civic Federation a few months ago, were talking about I guess a number of things, but one of them was one of the things we've complained about for years is inability to get nice restaurants. At least I live in the eastern part of the county, and we get fast food restaurants, but not nice restaurants, and that seems to be a common problem unless you live downtown Silver Spring or downtown Bethesda and some other places. But in a large part of the county, there are no nice restaurants. I go to Columbia all the time when I eat out. So the idea was, why can't we get nice restaurants? Well, one of the things we came up with was part of it is a lot of those nice restaurants want beer and wine, and they can't get the license. I'm talking about chain restaurants, not the one of a kind. So that's why we went and suggested us do this, to remove the limit. I'm kind of with Delegate Resnick in the sense that the existing ordinance makes my head swim on there's so many categories out there, and rather than making a separate category, the easiest thing to do, my thought, is just remove the limit. So I'm tired of looking every year, looking at all the alcohol bills. I've been looking at them with you guys about 4 or 5 years running, and I'm getting tired of looking at them. So I like to simplify the whole thing. So this is one step in that direction. So thank you very much. We support this, by the way.
All right, thank you, Dan. Well, some of us have been looking at it for more than 10 years, and I was told during my first year I should do something to clean up the alcohol laws in this county, and the joke was on me when I finally read all the rules. So there's so many, and we've done so many more exceptions and alterations since. We have some questions. Delegate Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before 2012, there was a limit of 5 in Montgomery County. As far as the chains could only have 5 locations. 2012, we passed, I thought was a significant bill at the time, and we raised the limits in several counties throughout the state. Montgomery's limit went from 5 to 10. So right now the limit in Montgomery is 10. They kept the limit because the idea was that the one-of-the-kind restaurant, you didn't want to put them completely out of business. And if you let the chains just go unlimited, the one-of-the-kind restaurant could considerably be put out of business. But they doubled the number it could be available in Montgomery County. So right now a chain could go from 5 up to 10. And since we passed the bill, I haven't seen any chains come running into Montgomery County, but there is plenty of room for restaurants to open up extra places. Whether it should be unlimited or not, I don't know. I'm just telling you what's happened. That bill happened to be Senator Conway's bill on the Senate side, and all these bills are going to go through her committee, so I'm sure she's going to take a hard look at it if you take the limit off altogether.
Right now, as you see in the fiscal note, that 7 of the 10 licenses must be located in specified geographic locations, so that's part of the limitation that was done at different times for different public policy reasons that just doesn't seem like we should have those barriers whatsoever. That was part of the reason.
Yeah, that was the primary reason, trying to figure out what the boundaries of those geographic areas are. What's the bounds of Rockville Town Center, what's the boundaries of Gaithersburg Town, Old Town, Gaithersburg, some of the areas I would be hard pressed to figure out where the geographic boundaries are. But if I want a restaurant just across the street, then I'd be out of luck. I'd be back to the 1 or 2 restaurants. So that's the reason.
Are there any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the next bill. MC 1414, Montgomery County, proportion of food and alcoholic beverage sales, Class B licenses. So this is 1414. We have Melanie Wanger. I've been practicing all night and she has left, but Heather Delapolsky has left from the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and Dan Wilhelm in opposition. But we'll start with just to shake things up a little bit. Thank you, Dan. But we'll start with Melanie and Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you. This piece of legislation does reflect a recommendation that was put forth by the Nighttime Economy Task Force that's been meeting over the summer to look at ways to improve the nighttime economy here in Montgomery County. What this bill does is it takes 2 types of licenses. One that allows food and alcoholic beverages to be served in restaurants, and another for hotel motels. And under current law, the requirement is that food must be at least 60% of the sale of the gross receipts between the alcohol and food sales combined. It's 50-50. This would change it so that the food proportion could be 40%.
Anything you needed to add, Kathy?
Only that most of this is just for one type of license, for the Class B, our most popular license. But it's a beer, wine, liquor restaurant license, and it would allow some of the businesses have expressed frustration in meeting the 50-50. They just need a little bit more leeway if they wanted to have, something happening later in the evening, or, they still wanted to have food available, but they didn't want to have a full menu. And with the price of martinis and drinks like that, high-end drinks that have become more and more expensive, it's been a little bit, I think they're having a hard time trying to meet those ratios. And so we haven't seen a, huge rush for people wanting to give 80%, have 80% alcohol or something, anything like that, but we don't have a license that gives those folks the opportunity to have no ratios. This is it for them. So they just wanted to have a little bit more leeway, a little more push, and that's what was requested during the task force.
Before we move on to the panel of opposition, are there any questions for Ms. Wanger or Ms. Durbin? Delegate Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. How do you all respond to the concerns that have been raised with regard to the prospect of increased drunk driving as a consequence of bringing down the food proportion to the alcohol? I'm curious to hear what discussion there may have been or how that's being addressed.
Well, I think that as far as I was liaison for the county executive on the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and listening to the group speak, there are those issues that are always discussed. But I don't think this is going to make that much of a difference in the way a person runs their business. They're just going to, and it's not that they want to sell more alcohol. They just want a little bit of the pressure of maybe less food sometimes late at night and not having a full menu all night. So I think that's more of this little 10% push. It's not like it's going all the way. So, people still have to be trained, people still have to be certified. We're also working on a program called Be My DD, Be My Designated Driver, coming into the county, and we have a meeting on Wednesday with them. So there's other things that are going on with this to help educate the public, and also patron responsibility programs. So I think that this is not just a standalone. There's a lot of things happening with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Delegate Cullison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry if I don't understand, but the ratio is related to revenue, or to the cost, right? It's not related to the amounts.
To sales.
So it's the sales receipts. That's the word I was like.
Receipts comprised of food sales and alcohol sales.
Right. So, what I see from the written testimony, part of the factor here has been the increased cost of alcohol in general that would require an increase in this kind of I mean, you could have the same amount of food being sold and the same amount of alcohol being sold and have a 60-40, given the cost of alcohol.
Are there any other questions? I did want to ask a question, Mr. Urban. What is the ratio in some of our neighboring jurisdictions like D.C.?
They range, D.C., Virginia, and other parts of Maryland range anywhere from 51 to 49 to 70-30. And not every license has ratios, of course. Many of them don't. And there's usually 1 or 2 licenses in each jurisdiction that has ratios.
Mr. Wilhelm in opposition.
Yeah, I'm the opposition panel. We opposed this. We weren't aware of all the stuff you just heard, but our concern was that if you start increasing the amount of alcohol that can be sold, it starts turning the restaurant into more of a beer, a bar rather, and we're not sure what the right dividing line is, but we don't want to turn these things into a bar and the problems that go with that. We think bars need to be more regulated than restaurants, so that's why we opposed it.
Any questions? If not, thank you all very much. Dan, thank you for coming tonight. MC 1514, Montgomery County, Town of Kensington Alcoholic Beverages Special BK Licenses. Delegate Carr, thank you. Tell us what a BK license is.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, my fellow members of the delegation. I am here to ask for your support for MC 15-14, and what this bill is intended to do is expand the geographic zone within the town of Kensington where a restaurant would be able to open and also to serve alcohol to their customers. And sending regrets from the town of Kensington mayor and council members. They had intended to send someone to testify on this bill. They did request it and sent a resolution, passed a resolution in support of the bill, but because of scheduling conflicts could not be here tonight.
Delegate Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Carr, every year Kensington comes in and we do another little piece and another little piece. Have you thought about just allowing it in the whole municipality and get it over with?
That's a good question, and I think that's probably a question for the mayor and council.
Okay, and I did ask our council tonight. This is the first time where we've had it where it's an exact location, and I'm not sure constitutionally if that's going to be allowed. So I asked council to get me an opinion on that because it is an exact location. Each of the other things are areas. I know some of them are pretty small, but I think we need to answer that question because I don't think we've done that before to an exact location.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you can also, we'll probably have to reach out to the town to Delegate Barkley's initial question about just expanding it altogether to the entire town borders would just be an interesting thing to find out from them. Are there any other questions on this bill? If not, thank you, Delegate Carr. The last bill of the evening is MC 1814, City of Tacoma Park Alcoholic Beverages Class B on and off sale license. We have one person testifying on this bill, Chief Goldberg from the City of Tacoma Park. But before that, I believe Delegate Hickson's going to join you as the sponsor, the lone representative here from District 20. It's sponsored by the entire District 20 team. Thank you, Delegate Hickson.
Thank you all. You notice when we come from 20, we bring reinforcements. He'll take care of me if you guys get it out of hand. No. No, and Jamie, of course, would be here, but he's testifying before the United States Supreme Court. Tom is home babysitting, and Heather is running for governor. So other than that, they're 100% behind this bill.
And Delegate Hickson, now that you've given... And now that you've given their excuses, you need to turn your mic on.
Well, I know you didn't want to hear me, so that was really. But this is really very simple. The bill removes two brackets: a sunset from the current law that changed in 2012 to allow restaurants to sell beer and wine off-site. For instance, Roscoe's, as a consumer, would be able to buy a six-pack of beer and take it home. This bill sunsets in 2014 so that the city could avoid criticism if the bill did not work out. No restaurants are currently taking advantage of the law, but the city of Tacoma Park would like to remove the sunset so that they can retain this option in the future. And it's a very much a local bill.
Yeah, I'm representing the city manager, Brian Kenner, and Suzanne Ludlow, and the city council. And the city council voted in favor of this bill, removing the sunset. In favor, they request a favorable report on 18-14.
Are there any questions on this bill? Delegate Cullison.
I guess I'm wondering why none of the establishments are taking advantage of it, and what's driving the desire for the sunset if there's no one who's doing it.
Well, I'm not really prepared to go into too much detail, but my understanding of it is that I think there was probably a lack of communication, and some places probably just didn't know it was available to them. The other thing that the city is looking at with the development in the area of Tacoma Junction, in the areas in Langley Park and outside of the city, we also have to remain competitive as far as businesses moving into the city, so that's why.
Any other questions? If not, we are adjourned in 30 seconds. Just thank you all for who have testified tonight. To remind everyone, Wednesday night we have the local hearing at 7. We're usually done with that one by about 8 o'clock. Hope to see everyone there. Delegate Resnick has already announced next Monday being the work session on the county affairs bills. All but 2 of the bills heard tonight are going to be assigned to county affairs. The archery hunting and the AED bill will be going to land use and transportation. So Delegate Resnick said the agenda will be out in the next day or two, which bills will be on the agenda for next Monday night's work session. And then to remind everyone again, Sunshine Fund checks to Sarah Hartman, please. A lot of happy events recently, but also sad events where we send flowers and other items to our delegation colleagues. So please get that along to Sarah. Thank you.